having a positive view of aging helps you live 7.5 years longer.
Yeah.
7.5 years, that is more than diet, that's more than exercise, that's more than smoking.
I know.
Today on the show,
Nir Eyal, a million-copy best-selling author of Hooked, Indistractable, and Beyond Belief, and an expert in behavioral design and human potential, with over 15 years of experience.
How true is what you're saying in therapy actually true?
Very controversial point. Is talk therapy better than a placebo? No, it's not better than a placebo.
Wow.
And the most important lesson I learned from the 6 years of research into this book is that beliefs are tools, not truths. The work of Gabrielle Oettingen, she took people and she asked them to do a visioning exercise, right? To manifest abundance, to manifest a beach body, to manifest good grades on an exam. And as they were doing this visioning exercise about some kind of outcome they wanted, their blood pressure dropped, they became more relaxed. She found they actually did less of the steps that it would take to get what they wanted. So they became less likely to get the outcomes. Many of your listeners are going to want to know the answer to. They wake up every morning wondering,
Guys, I have written a book and I've just heard it's a Sunday Times bestseller, which is very exciting. Now, it's called Healthy Shouldn't Be This Hard because truly that is the reason why I really started this show. Healthy really shouldn't be this hard. And the one thing that I found from all the years of being in the well-being space and working as a nutritionist and interviewing incredible people is that there is one vital step that is missing in our health information: us and ourselves, and being self-compassionate. Treating ourselves as we would a best friend seems to be fully overlooked and maybe even seen as soft. But this book is going to help you re-explore that and realize there is so much science behind just how we think shapes every cell in our body, shapes our physiology, how we metabolize food, how we respond to food, and even the choices that we make. So if you want to know more, this book quite literally might change your life. So head to the show notes where I'll put the link. You can head to Amazon or any good bookstore and you will be able to buy Healthy Shouldn't Be This Hard. And if you do, I'd love to know what you think. Yeah, welcome.
thank you, great to be here.
We've just had a half an hour chat
I
before
know,
we even
right?
started. We should have pressed record.
Maybe there's some clips we can take out of it.
Yeah. So belief.
Yeah.
It's your new book. Tell me, why is it that we have these beliefs about ourselves when the evidence is sat in front of us that is actually telling a completely different story?
Because we don't see reality clearly. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we believe them to be. We see things as we are. And I don't mean metaphorically. I don't mean figuratively. I mean literally. That I can show two people the exact same image, and based on where they were born, one group will see circles, the other will see squares. Same image.
Is that like urban versus countryside?
That's right, the Kaffer illusion. That's right, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's I can show there's a checkerboard illusion in the book where you can see this checkerboard, and it looks like square A and square B are the same color, but they're not the same color. It looks like square A and square B are different colors,
Right.
but in fact they're the same color. What's amazing is that not only does square A look darker than square B, even though it's not, what's really amazing is that even when I tell you the truth, even when you experience it for yourself, even when you say, okay, I agree now, they are the same color. When you block out the space between the two squares, you can see, yep, 100% for a fact, they are the same color. When you look back at the first image, you still can't see it differently. Your brain continues to lie to you, even when you know the truth. Like, we should all be rioting in the streets over this. This is the closest to realizing that you're in the Matrix that you could ever find. And it's not that you're in in a simulation created by robot aliens. That's not what's going on. But you are definitely in a simulation inside your own head. That your brain is not seeing reality clearly because it can't. There's too much information out there. In fact, we know that the brain is processing 11 million bits per second. 11 million bits per second. That's the equivalent of reading War and Peace every second, twice. So imagine 2,000 pages of text every single second. Tremendous amount of information. But your conscious awareness, what you call the real world, can only process about 50 bits. So that's one sentence per second. So 2,000 pages of text versus one sentence. So what does your brain do to compensate? Because it can't absorb all that information. It has to see reality not as it is, but through this filter of beliefs. And so beliefs shape what you see, literally what you are able to see with your eyeballs, what you feel, not just your feelings, but your physiological state, how you experience pain and suffering. And finally, your sense of agency, what you are able to do. And so all this wrapped up together means that your beliefs directly affect who you become. And so I think, after this is my third book now, after giving people very practical advice, solving problems, here's exactly what to do, step 1, 2, 3, none of it matters. None of it matters unless you understand beliefs, because beliefs are upstream of our behavior, of our identity, of how we perceive the world. So if you don't understand beliefs, nothing else will make a difference.
Beliefs, before we even get into why you wrote this book, how would you actually define a belief?
Yeah, great question. So I'm, as a fellow dyslexic word nerd, I know you are as well.
Yeah.
Definitions really matter.
Yeah.
And we many times conflate beliefs for facts. And that's not true. People say, I believe this to be true. I don't think it means what you think it means. That a fact has a specific definition. A fact is an objective truth. It is something that is true whether or not you believe it. Mm-hmm. The world is more like a sphere than it is flat. I'm sorry, flat earthers, the world doesn't care what you believe. A fact's a fact. You cannot change facts. Beliefs are something different. Okay, beliefs are also not faith. Faith is a conviction that does not require evidence. Okay, so God rewards the righteous. That's a matter of faith. There's no amount of evidence that I could present to somebody that would change their mind on that conviction, nor should it. It's a matter of faith. But between fact and faith is something very special. Between fact and faith is a belief. A belief is defined as a conviction that is open to revision based on evidence. And where beliefs are so useful and so important is that they oftentimes determine how we see the future, things that have not happened yet. So things that cannot be facts yet because they're not here yet. And so what makes them so special and why I think they're undervalued is that unlike faith, which people almost never change, unlike facts, which you cannot change, beliefs are open to revision based on evidence. You don't pull them out of thin air. They do require evidence, but they are open to revision. So the most important lesson I learned from the 6 years of research into this book is that beliefs are tools, not truths. Beliefs are tools, not truths. That's the mantra that I say to myself all day long. Beliefs are tools, not truths. That they're malleable, that we can use them to serve us rather than hurt us. But of course, most of us live our lives every day with all these beliefs that were imprinted upon us from childhood, from our past experiences, from something somebody said, and we never assess whether they're useful. We just take them to be facts, but they're not facts. They're not objective truths. They're predictions about the future. And many times those beliefs are holding us back. We call these limiting beliefs. And so what I try to do with this book and my research is how can we take those limiting beliefs, see them for what they are, and turn them into what we call liberating beliefs. And that's a transformational process because it affects every area of your life, your health, your career, your relationships. There's no area of your life that's not touched by these limiting beliefs converted into liberating beliefs.
I attended TED earlier this year and I found myself in conversations with the founders of No Watch. You've probably seen me wear something on my wrist and lots of you have messaged me asking me what this is. It looks like a classic watch, but it's actually quietly tracking something much more meaningful, your autonomic nervous system. This is the system that governs everything from how you respond, from excitement to anxiety, calm to overwhelm. Most wearables just give you a score, but if you're anything like me, that score can sometimes make you feel worse, like you're already behind before your day even begins. No Watch works differently. There is no judgment and there is no dopamine chasing dashboard. It simply reflects what your body is already experiencing and also helps you notice what it might be missing. It gives you minute-by-minute timeline of your stress responses and your recovery. The recovery is the most important part and is the part that no one talks about. And it is often the most revealing marker of our long-term health. In just 5 days, it calibrates to your body and it builds your personal health fingerprint. You can try it for free now for 30 days. And if you use the code LWBW, you can also get 15% off. If you want to understand your body, not just through performance, but through self-awareness, then this is where I'd begin.
I think that's so powerful because I guess it's just saying that you can have autonomy over your life, right? You can have autonomy over your mind, where I think a lot of us can get stuck in this like rumination cycle, right? The negativity spiral that we can all fall victim to. I mean, that's literally being human at the end of the day. How do you, I can't focus. I'm not smart. I'll never be successful.
I'm not a math person. I'm too
Yeah.
old. I'm too young. I'm too fat. I'm too thin. It just goes on and on and on.
There's so many, right?
So many, yeah.
How do you like catch yourself out of that downward spiral that so many of us can do? Because you said something there really interesting, right? Fact is the world is round. Faith is, maybe I believe in an afterlife, or I believe in X, Y, Z, but again, hope is kind of maybe how I connect to faith. But the belief, as you said, is the intersection in the middle of that. How do you transform a negative belief into a more positive, liberating belief?
Right. So I would change a little bit of what you said in that we can't necessarily affect everything that happens to us.
Right.
That a lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm taking issue with in this book is the positive thinking mindset.
I go against that too.
It sounds like a good thing, right? Like, well, who could be against positive thinking, and who can be against manifesting, and who can be against vision boarding? Well, given the promise, I fell for it too. I love the idea of, well, just think positive, just be an optimist all day, just vision board, just manifest. It's very, very seductive, and I fell for it too. The problem is the data doesn't support it. That when you look at the studies, what I didn't want to admit, but what the studies have found, is that just the positive thinking, just the manifesting, and it's so popular these days.
It's the biggest buzzword of the last few years.
So much so.
But the science
is pretty damning, right?
Is.
That you look at the work of Gabrielle Oettingen. She took people and she asked them to do a visioning exercise, right? To manifest abundance, to manifest a beach body, to manifest good grades on an exam. And it turns out the people who did that, she attached them to blood pressure monitors. And as they were doing this visioning exercise about some kind of outcome they wanted, their blood pressure dropped, they became more relaxed, and in follow-ups, she found they actually did less of the steps that it would take to get what they wanted. So they became less likely to get the outcomes. Now, why would that be? It's because when you're putting in your order, you're calling up your Uber or DoorDash and saying, hey, please, universe, I've been vibrating at your cosmic vibrations. Stuff's on the way, right? And so you become less likely to do the things you have to do because you've already put in the order. I've already asked for abundance. I've already asked for the beach body. It's coming. And then, of course, what invariably happens is when it doesn't come or when it gets difficult and you stop, who do you blame? Do you blame the guru? Do you blame the program? Do you blame the bad advice? No, you blame yourself. You think, well, I must not be vibrating hard enough or whatever. And it turns out, so that's been really bad advice. And so I'm trying to help people see that there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And this is very science-backed, that the right way is called mental contrasting. Mental contrasting uses what athletes have been doing for decades. When we think about, well, how can visioning be wrong? How can manifesting be wrong? Isn't that what athletes do? No. You know what athletes do? Athletes don't vision the outcome. Professional athletes don't vision the gold medal and the trophy. That's not what they do. That's what manifesting tells us to do. Picture, I want abundance, I want love in my life, I want, which, by the way, trains us to believe that we cannot stop suffering until we get those things. Right? We think that the only way I can stop suffering is when I have. So please, cosmic slot machine, gimme, 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 gimme. Right? It trains us to need things. So back to where we started originally, stuff happens, right? If you get sick, God forbid, if something happens in your life, that's not your fault. It's not because you didn't vibrate hard enough or because you didn't wish for it or you're bringing bad things into your life. That's sick to tell people. It's very harmful. It's not your fault. You didn't do those things. But what is in your control is how you respond to those things based on your beliefs. So the big revelation is to do what athletes do, to get back to what really works. Athletes won't vision the outcome. That's useless. And in fact, very harmful, because when you vision the outcome and then something bad happens, oh my gosh, what's going on? There's something went wrong. I must not be doing it right. So what athletes will do is that they will vision how they will respond physically and most importantly, psychologically when something hard happens, when something unexpected happens. So Michael Phelps tells this story of when he was in the Olympics and he was in this race and his goggles fell off in the middle of the race while he's in the water. For most of us, I don't know about you, I would panic. All right? Oh my God, this terrible thing happened. But he had rehearsed it so many times that when something uncomfortable happened, hey, no big deal, right? Well, what changed? He had a different belief about what that means. Same event, different belief. To most people, goggles falling off in the middle of a swimming race would be disastrous. But to him, he'd practiced it so many times, okay, expected it. That's mental contrasting, is to prepare ourselves. So for me, for example, I used to be clinically obese, not just overweight, but clinically obese. Like I remember the doctor said, okay, here's normal weight, here's overweight, this is the yellow zone, here's you're in the red zone.
When was this?
This was I remember going to fat camp at 8 years old.
Oh, that word, fat camp, is
Yeah,
just so
I know,
destroying.
I'm sorry, but that's what it was. There's no way to hide it. That's what it was. And
At 8, being told you're going to fat camp.
Yeah, and my parents did the best they could. And, and then it all into early adulthood. And I still struggle with it. I still have to be conscious of it. But what helped me wasn't sitting on the couch and saying, I want 6-pack abs.
Yeah.
Gimme, gimme, gimme. That's not what helped. What helped was doing this mental contrasting, asking myself, okay, I'm going to go to this party on Friday night, and I know someone at the dinner party is going to offer me a piece of chocolate cake, and I know I'm going to want the chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake. And I also am going to feel uncomfortable saying no to that person. So how can I prepare? Just like how the athlete says to themselves, okay, if I'm on offense and defense is coming at me, if I'm skiing down the mountain and I slip, what am I going to do? Just like Michael Phelps prepared for what happens when the goggles fall off, what am I going to do when something feels bad? That's the trick. What are my beliefs about pain? Because one of the most important lessons I learned, and I think this is the unlock to life, is that pain is not suffering. Pain is not suffering. And I didn't invent this. This is an ancient practice. Buddhism said this a long time ago. Many other religions have said this as well, that pain is just signal. Pain is part of that 11 million bits of information we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's just information. Suffering is the interpretation of that information, right? So the stuff happening to you, you can't control that. Pain is going to happen. The suffering part, the story we tell, that's what we can change. So for me, when I would go to that dinner party, how will I respond to that invariable pain, to the hunger pangs of I want the chocolate cake, to the difficulty of saying no when I really want it? That's what I had to prepare for by telling myself a different story.
What did you tell yourself?
Well, what I still tell myself is this is what it feels like to get better. This is what it feels like to get better. Now, is that a fact? No, it's a belief, but it's a tool, not a truth. So I used to say, I'm feeling hungry. I got to eat. It's terrible. Hunger is bad. I got to escape this. I don't want to feel this way. And then I realized that, wait a minute, pain is just signal. And sometimes pain can be a very good thing. That pain without suffering is purpose. Pain minus suffering is purpose. That when I was doing something that was meaningful to me, that was getting to me where I wanted to go. That's why the mantra that I constantly repeat to myself, whether it's when I'm writing, which is really hard work, whether I'm watching what I eat, which is really hard work, whatever it is that don't be difficult. And before I would escape, right? I would scroll it away, I would drink it away, I would click it away, I'd escape, right? I don't want to feel bad.
Yeah.
Rather, the story I now tell, this feeling, same sensation, same pain, completely different story. This is what it feels like to get better. So when I'm writing, and all I want to do is check email or the news, you've written a book, right? Took you 8 years, took me 6 years.
I know.
All you want to do is something else. But now the mantra I constantly repeat to myself, hey, you know what? Who said feeling bad is bad? Like if you can adopt that thought, feeling bad is not bad. Feeling bad is not bad. It's one of the most powerful lessons I learned writing this book. That pain is not suffering. In the brain, it's not the same. It's different areas of the brain process pain versus suffering. That suffering is a cognitive process versus pain is a biological process. That sickness is not illness. Those are also two separate things. And once you understand that, you can not only change your feelings, how you think about things, literally your physiological responses, how you experience suffering in the first place completely changes. And that is a massive, massive unlock.
Most wellness products are built for someone with 4 hours sleep to spare and a cold plunge in their garden. Diom is built for the rest of us. It's a day-to-night system formulated by medical doctors designed around your body's natural rhythms. During the day, Grounded, a go-to convenient sachet, supports calm and focus without making you drowsy. In a real-life UK study, 90% of people felt a benefit within 15 minutes, and I take mine after interviews to really help calm my nervous system. At night, Rested, a nightly capsule with botanicals, vitamins, and magnesium, helps you actually sleep. In their study, volunteers gained up to 1 hour of additional sleep on average within the first week. Over 9 in 10 reported more restful sleep. Grounded is launching very soon, and you can shop both at diom.co. That's diome.co. Use code Sarah20 for 20% off, whether you're buying once or subscribing. Well, I talk a lot about stepping into suffering as your compassionate strength. So kind of actually when you notice the awareness of what is going on, the most courageous thing you can do is kind of like take the step forward into making that change, right? Because a lot of the times we want to retract. We want to like go back and like not step into that pain,
Right.
which actually prolongs it.
Totally.
I think the biggest thing that people might kind of think about this when they're listening is around the word motivation. And it kind of also can come hand in hand with willpower, which was a question I was asked on a panel yesterday around willpower.
Yeah.
Motivation. So we're taught, I think, a lot, or maybe this is what I grew up, how, you know, discipline, the hard plus hard model always equals success. How do you look at motivation when it comes to belief? To actually, is there some people that can seem to stay consistent the entire time and other people can't? And there's like a kind of a collapse, and then they kind of think, well, why can that person go on and stay consistent? All you ever hear is consistency is so important to getting the end goal.
And of course, there is a lot of truth to that. When we look at studies on what differentiates people who succeed at a goal versus those who don't, it's not intelligence, it's not resources, it's not information. You know, a lot of people think it's just information, that if I just bought the right book, if I listened to the right podcast, if I saw the right YouTube video, I'd get the secret. There must be some kind of miracle
Oh, think about
information.
The Secret.
Yeah,
Literally,
exactly. That's why it sold so well, right? Is that, and we, of course, we love the simple fixes.
Yeah.
Right. We love the get rich quick schemes, and there just must be, oh, if you knew this one simple tip, everything would
It's
change.
like what we said when we came in with our book sales, right? Like, what was it? And we were both like, it's just a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of hard work, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we know that the differentiating factor is one thing, whether the most likely determinant of whether you reach a goal. It's not information, it's not intelligence, it's not resources, it's whether or not you quit. That's a fact. That persistence does not guarantee success, but quitting guarantees failure. Pretty simple. So if we know how important persistence is, how do we stay motivated? You know the story about Kurt Richter. You read the book, so you know the story. Should I tell that story?
Yeah,
I think
please
it's
tell that
super
story.
illustrative of the concept. So Kurt Richter was this biologist back in the 1950s. And in the 1950s, there was a novel question that I know many of your listeners are going to want to know the answer to. They wake up every morning wondering, how long can a rat swim? That was Richter's question, right?
That's what I think about every morning.
Every morning, right? We all want to know, how long can a rat swim for? So this was the 1950s, so 75 years ago. Nobody really knew. So Richter took a wild rat, put it in a cylinder of water, not this coffee cup, a cylinder of water, and he stood there with a stopwatch, and he watched how long the rat could swim. And turns out the answer, 15 minutes. A rat can swim in a cylinder of water for 15 minutes before it starts to give up and drowns. Now, he had another question. He's a very curious biologist. He wanted to know, could he increase the persistence of the rat? Could he help the rat swim longer somehow? And if so, how much longer? What's really the rat's limit? Because he saw that the rats didn't seem to be exhausted. They just kind of gave up. So he took a new group of rats, put them in the same cylinder of water, and this time, at the 15-minute mark, now that he knew that a rat would give up at 15 minutes, he would reach in, take out the wild rat, dry it off, let it catch its breath for a minute, and then plunk back into the water it went. And he did this a few times. He conditioned the rat to expect that hope was possible, that if it persisted, salvation might come. And so after a few times of conditioning the rat to do this, he now wanted to see how much longer the rat would swim. And he did increase the rat's persistence. Now, when I tell this story to an audience, I will ask, how much longer did the rat swim for? And people will say, 30 minutes, 100% improvement, 45 minutes. Some people, if they're really ambitious, will say an hour of swimming, which would be incredible. If there was some way, you stuck with that diet 4 times longer, you ran that race 4 times further, you made those difficult sales calls, whatever it is that is hard for you.
Yeah.
You studied for that exam 4 times longer. That'd be incredible. That would be, can you imagine? There's nothing short of some kind of pharmaceutical intervention that would make you 4 times more persistent, right? But the rats didn't swim for 60 minutes. They swam for 60 hours.
I find that mad.
60 hours of nonstop
Michael
swimming.
Phelps.
Yeah, kind of. Well, that's a great point. So what changed? The rats didn't become Michael Phelps rats, right? Their bodies had not changed at all. Same rats. The environment didn't change. As much as we talk about, the environment makes a difference. The environment hadn't changed. Same cylinder of water. The only thing that changed, we can't ask the rats, obviously, but we think the only thing that changed was a belief that there was some kind of some kind of switch flipped in their mind that suddenly kept them swimming, that they believed something different. And so you see the metaphor here, right? We are those rats, that so many of us, we have the 60 hours within us. The rats, nothing changed within them. They always had the 60 hours within them. It was there. They just kept quitting at 15 minutes because they didn't know. They didn't know why they should persist. They didn't know that salvation might come. So that's kind of the one of the most important studies, I think, in the book, because it's such a great metaphor for us that we constantly quit at the 15-minute mark based on our limiting beliefs, even when we have so much more inside of us. So that's really my goal, is to show people that, 1, your brain doesn't see reality clearly, and that 2, we can do so much more than we know based on these self-limiting beliefs. So if we can free ourselves from that.
Do you know what? I talk about this in a really different study in my book, which is really interesting because this is a human RCT by Leah Crum at Stanford, who's one of my favorite scientists, and she talks a lot about perception. And she did this where she, have you ever done a DNA test where you've got your kind of genetics back?
Yeah.
How they're distributed to you affects, right, what you're thinking. So if someone says you're at a high risk of the FTO gene, which is the fat gene, your belief at that point is, oh, I'm not going to metabolize food very well. I'm more likely to become fat. Oh, you haven't got the endurance gene. What does that mean? Oh, I'm not going to be as good at kind of endurance exercise. So she literally put participants on a treadmill. She got them to run. She took their blood work and she said to one group, you have the endurance gene. You're great at running. A bit more intense, a bit more descriptive than that, but basically top line. The other group, she said, you don't have the endurance gene, so you're not actually very good at running. The next time they went on the treadmill, their lung capacity changed. The people that told that they didn't have the endurance gene came off a lot earlier. The other ones that did overcame their PB from the week before. And it was the same with the food. The people that were told they had the FTO gene hormonally responded totally differently to the same meal a week later than the ones that were told, oh, you don't have the FTO gene.
Hormonally. So not just
so this
mentally.
is physiology, right?
It never ceases to amaze me.
So when I'm looking at this with clients and stuff that come to see me as a nutritionist, and for myself for years, I was like, I'm telling somebody who sits off at me, this is good food, this is bad food. Do this, don't do this. This is changing the way that they're even seeing and perceiving the food that's in front of them to hormonally and physiology respond to the belief about this food. For me, it was completely eye-opening.
It's remarkable.
On how we see things so silo.
Yeah.
And, I think about the productivity world, and all the things that we have to do, and we're never kind of keeping up. How do we change that belief from the overwhelm of what we kind of are meant to be doing, right? And I can feel that right now in the midst of my book tour, the overwhelm of all the things that I should be doing, right? And I think many people might feel that with the overwhelm of family life, or the overwhelm of wanting to get their promotion, or the overwhelm of trying to stay connected socially, or the overwhelm of how can we change that belief into something that's more, I don't want to say positive, because as you said, it's not always about having a positive belief, but one that's more liberating and going to actually move the needle.
Yeah. Man, there's so much I want to respond to, because the where you started is so, the whole idea of how your beliefs can become your biology.
That's the entire book that I wrote.
It's mind-blowing. It is so, that study, that Yale study about how having a positive view of aging helps you live 7.5 years longer.
Yeah.
7.5 years, that is more than diet. That's more than exercise. That's more than smoking.
I know.
But we see all these campaigns and, don't smoke, eat right, exercise. Nobody tells you have a positive view of aging, which is going to increase your lifespan more than any of those things.
Yeah, pro-aging, not anti-aging.
Right. Having a
Right?
positive view,
Yeah.
right? One belief, I think the negative condition was something to the effect which we hear all the time. I'm too old for this. There's my senior brain. I'm having a senior moment. So basically one condition was, I think it was aging involves inevitable decline. That was basically how they categorized those negative beliefs. Aging involves inevitable decline versus growth is possible at any age. Which one is true? They're both true.
Well, I want to say this one.
Right. So that's your default, right?
Yeah.
When you forget your keys, is it a senior moment or this always happens, right? Or it
Or
happens
maybe
to
I'm just
everybody.
overwhelmed right
Yeah,
now.
or variability. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's life. That's part of
Yeah.
being human.
Yeah.
I was thinking about other priorities, or so those two groups. The difference between aging involves inevitable decline versus growth is possible at any age. It's not that belief affects your mitochondria or your genes. Like there's no magic vibrations happening. It's simply that beliefs do change your biology via behavior. That it all changes what you actually do. So how likely is the person who believes growth is possible at any age to volunteer in the community or to talk to their neighbors or to work in the garden and get some extra exercise? So your beliefs really do become your biology, but it's because it changes what you do. And so I think that's so empowering by understanding that, by constantly questioning. And it's the tip of the iceberg. When we talk about, there's a chapter in the book where I talk about this guy in the case literature called Mr. A, where Mr. A, he's anonymized because he does something that you'll see why. He decides one day he's having this terrible breakup with his girlfriend, and he decides to commit suicide. He's going to end it all. And he goes to his medicine cabinet. He opens the medicine cabinet. He sees this pill jar of antidepressants, and he swallows the entire bottle of antidepressants. And as he's swallowing the last pill, he changes his mind. He decides he does want to live after all. So he rushes to the neighbor's house, bangs on the door, says, "You have to take me to the hospital." They rush him to the ER. He collapses on the floor of the ER and says, "I took all my pills. And he gives the nurse his pill bottle. They rush him into the operating room. They're trying to figure out what he's overdosed on. And they look at the pill jar, and it doesn't say the name of the medication. It says a phone number. They call the phone number, and they look him up on the computer. And it turns out that Mr. A was in a clinical trial for these antidepressants, and that he hadn't taken the antidepressants because he was in the control group. So he had taken an entire bottle of an inert substance. Okay. All his symptoms, his falling blood pressure, his slipping in and out of consciousness, his low heart rate, all these physiological symptoms, which were recorded. They saw that he was having an overdose. He had all the physiological symptoms of an overdose. When they tell him this, his blood pressure stabilizes, his heart rate goes back to normal. He walks out 15 minutes later, completely healthy, maybe a little embarrassed. And so if our beliefs about what is happening to us can do this, right? That I like to say the most dangerous words in the English language are whatever come after I am. So I am having an overdose. Turns out there are you will start experiencing those physiological symptoms. So if you believe I am someone who carries the fat gene, that's going to have physiological symptoms. I am someone who struggles with ADHD. I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I know you have as well.
I have as well.
Yeah. I used to tell myself this story that I have a chronic brain disease. And every time I would get a bit distracted, you see, there's my ADHD. And how come I have to suffer this and other people don't? And how am I going to finish on my deadline? And what if I can never focus? And it's never going to go away. And I would go down this anxiety spiral that meant all my attention was focused on my ADHD and none of it was on the thing I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I was making my symptoms worse. So now I changed the belief, right? I found it's not based out of thin air. I found studies that show that about a third of people who are diagnosed with ADHD as children don't have the diagnosis as adults, that they can actually learn their way out of it based on skills that they gain. So now, whenever I get distracted, I don't say, there's my chronic brain disease. There's no blood test for ADHD. There's no x-ray. It's based on subjective symptoms. It's a Likert scale. How often do you feel distracted? Never, sometimes, often. It's self-reported. So now I don't tell myself I have a chronic brain disease because that wasn't helpful. I tell myself, this is a skill I'm learning. This is a skill I'm learning. Is it true? I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. I'm telling you what worked for me. What worked
Yeah.
for me is thinking it's a skill. So, I like to say that a diagnosis or an identity is like a map that here's you, here's the treasure. Okay, X marks a spot.
Mhm.
And to get to where you're going, a map tells you a path. Now, it could be that other people are at different places on that map. Maybe people who don't have ADHD are closer to the treasure, and maybe they don't have to do as much as I do. But I'm not the map. Okay? I'm not the identity. So when I shed the identity of, well, I'm just a fat guy, right? That's who I am. That's my personality. I'm a Sagittarius. This is my Myers-Briggs. This is my anagram. It's so harmful. We don't understand. It's very comforting. It's very comforting. We love to think, this is the answer to all my problems. Now I know what type of person I am. Turns out your labels become your limits.
That's so powerful and so important for people to understand. Like when you just said about that treasure map, I have a different one where I'm at the top of a mountain. I'm about to ski down a mountain, right? And I'm standing there, and my belief that there can be one run, right? My belief is that I'm going to get down this one run to the end. But there's also 5 other runs at the top of that mountain. And if I go down the one to my right, I might go via an après ski bar. And I might have a drink there, and I might meet 3 other people that could then help me get down the last part of that slope. Or if I go down the middle slope, there's a different outcome to a different village that I might not know about. And so I always think about that when I'm in that moment of trying to challenge a belief where I'm at, that there's not just this one run. There's not one way down the mountain.
Yeah.
There's 5 other runs, and they all have different paths and different endings. And I think that lens view is
wonderful.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Because so often we will just project, Lisa Feldman Barrett, who was one of my favorite guests on this show, about prediction machines in our brain. She told me about how important it is that the predictions of our brain is literally what elicits that emotion. Emotions are they can change literally from what you're thinking and believing. And so thinking about the ski runs, I always think about that now.
It's great.
When I'm standing there.
I have one small ask while you're watching this show. If you're enjoying it, please hit subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on. This really, really helps the show more than you can realize. It helps people that have never listened to the show before come across it and see all the incredible episodes that we have with the amazing guests. So if there's one small favor today, if you're not already a subscriber, please do subscribe.
It actually, you asked me earlier and I didn't answer it about, well, how do we change these limiting beliefs? There's a process, there's steps, and the most effective protocol I've found is called inquiry-based stress reduction.
Inquiry.
Inquiry. Sorry,
inquiry.
I'm saying with an American
2
accent.
dyslexics here as well.
Inquiry. Not an easy word. Inquiry-based stress reduction. To
Inquiry-based.
inquire, and it's
Okay.
actually I've never heard the metaphor of skiing down the mountain with multiple paths, but you'll see why it's very apt. It's a great metaphor. So the best way to explain how to do this is to tell you how I did in my own life and how I writing this book. The thing that changed most that I applied to my day-to-day life is how I see my relationships. So here's how it works. Here's how it changed my life. So one belief that I've always grown up with is that my mom is very judgmental. Okay, she's very hard to please. That's just the way she is. And a few years ago, it was my mom's birthday, and I wanted to send her some flowers. The problem was I was living in Singapore, and she was in Central Florida, so literally the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
And getting flowers to the other side of the planet was not so easy. I stayed up till 1 a.m, calling the florist, making sure they had the perfect bouquet, and would deliver it to her on time, so she would finally be happy and have her flowers that I knew she was going to love. And I really thought that she was going to call me the next morning and say, Nir, you're such a great son, amazing flowers, thank you.
All this effort that you went to.
Yeah, incredible. That did not happen. What happened, Sarah, is that the next day, I call her up and I say, hey, Mom, happy birthday. Did you get the flowers I sent you? And she says, yeah, I got the flowers, but just so you know, they arrived half dead. So don't order from that florist anymore. To which I said, after a deep breath, I said, well, that's the last time I buy you flowers. And
Shot down straight away.
Yeah, and I said it. I'm not proud of it, but that's exactly what I said. And my wife, who was sitting next to me and was on this call to my mom for her birthday, she turns to, and we work together. So her name's on the book, and
I
she's
love
my
that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Julie, that's my wife. And she
Me
knew
too.
all this research that she knew all this research that I've been working on for this book. And she turned to me very lovingly and she said, Nir, would you like to do a turnaround on this? To which I said, no, I do not want to do your mumbo jumbo hocus pocus. I want to vent, right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to speak our truth. We're supposed to tell people how we feel. If people hurt our feelings, we're not supposed to let them. We're supposed to tell them, don't do
Get it
that.
out, get it out.
Right, exactly. We're supposed to vent. Thankfully, I knew enough about what the literature says that venting does nothing but reinforce what we believe about people. That we don't see people as they are, we see them as we believe them to be. Just like we don't see reality as it is, we see people as we are, not as they are, how we believe them to be, especially the people who are closest to us. She always does that. That's so like her. There she goes again. We say these things all the time. We're reinforcing this effigy of who they are, not how they actually are. So I took a step back. I said, fine, I'm not going to vent. And I did this exercise. So this anybody can use. This is how we do it. This is how we find our limiting beliefs, which are not so easy to find. The tricky thing about limiting beliefs.
You've got to be self-aware to do this, though.
Well, yeah, not only do you have to be self-aware, you have to start from the understanding that your limiting beliefs are always hidden by design.
Yeah.
It's kind of like your face, right? We all have a face. But if I told you, Sarah, can you please look at your face right now? Look at your face. You have a
Someone
face.
give me a mirror.
Right, exactly. You need a mirror because you have to reflect.
Yeah.
You need something outside of yourself to see you.
Is this
right?
your wife?
It's this inquiry-based stress reduction. That's what she was leading me towards. It was this
You
turnaround.
married the right woman.
I did.
I'm just saying.
No, I can't
There's
agree
another
with you more.
reason on why having the right partner is so important for your belief system, by the way. But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So, so just like our face, right? We can see everyone else's face. We can see everybody else's limiting beliefs. So, oh yeah, I can tell you my kids, my boss, my spouse. I can tell you everybody else's limiting beliefs. My own, I can't see. It's hidden to me. And so what you have to do is you have to reflect. You have to use a process. So here's what you do. Step number 1, you ask yourself where you're suffering. Okay, where in your life are you suffering? Where I like to call it, where's the muck? The muck is where you are stuck.
How do you find that, though?
Oh, I don't know about you. I got tons. Where do we start?
But sometimes we can tell ourselves a narrative like, oh, no, I'm fine. Or like, the reason why I say that is because, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the reason why I say that is because I think a lot of people will feel that that's quite a large question. And when I was modeling in my previous life many, many years ago, I had the success on the outward. So I couldn't ever say I was suffering because to me, I was like, oh, well, I've got the things that's meant to make you happy. And I'm just being very ungrateful. And therefore, I cannot address that because that makes me seem very ungrateful. So I should be very happy that I have this lifestyle.
Right.
Vice versa. Somebody else could be having a really tough time, but being like, this is just life. So I have to
But if
be
I
in
asked you,
that.
let's say in your toughest moments, or even in your not tough moments, if I asked you to yourself, let's say, or a very, very close trusted friend, your most trusted friend, and asked you like, how you doing? How you feeling? Do you think those uncomfortable sensations, the I'm not fulfilled, I know I can, something's not right. Were they there, those uncomfortable sensations? Or even now, we just talked about how you hit the list, you're doing incredible, but you also were saying like, this is tough, this is hard, this is, I heard some suffering, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're
exhausted.
Yeah, exhausted, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to look for.
Right, okay.
Where in your life, because again, what we're trying to do is to separate the pain from the suffering.
Got
the
you.
actual what's happening in the world, which you cannot change, right? Lots of things will happen to you. Bad things happen.
That's life. Yeah.
That's life versus the interpretation of what's happening.
Right,
You can't
okay.
change the pain. The pain's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's the suffering we're looking for.
Right.
So where is the suffering in your life? A lot of times when I talk to people, it's I'm not spending enough time with the people I love. I feel like you said it earlier around how I feel like I should be doing all these things and I'm not. I have that goal that's been my New Year's resolution for years, to get in shape, to write that book, to repair a broken relationship. Where is that thing in your life that's causing you some kind of suffering? Okay, and day to day, I think we all have that. Maybe it's the minor annoyances of I get pissed off in traffic when someone cuts me off, or I'm at the
too
airport.
short.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm not
too
patient.
reactive.
Too reactive. Yeah, that's suffering. So you just think about one of those simple areas, right?
Okay.
The last time You got annoyed, for
Right.
example. What was causing you the annoyance? I was in line to buy coffee and it was a long line. It could be as simple as that. Great. For me, it was what was causing me suffering was my mom is too judgmental. Okay, that was causing, she was on the other side of the planet. She wasn't in the room, and yet it was pissing me off that she was so judgmental over this nice thing that I did. So I wrote it down. My mother is too judgmental and hard to please. That was my belief. Now what we're going to do is we're going to ask ourselves 4 questions that come from The Work by Byron Katie, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And what
Love her.
she did, yes, so that's actually the origin of inquiry-based stress reduction. It was kind of this technique that she developed, but then the scientific community took it seriously and turned it into inquiry-based stress reduction, and now it's been actually scientifically validated in a few studies. But to give proper credit, it's actually a 2,000-year-old technique that actually Aristotle did something very similar. So Byron Katie took what has been done, by
Philosophy.
dozens of different people,
Yeah.
and she turned it into a very practical 4-step process. And so here's what The Work asks. It asks you, first write down that belief. Question number 1, is it true? My mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Sarah. What a stupid question. Clearly, if somebody sends you flowers from halfway across the world, you say,
Yes.
thank you, right?
Yeah.
You don't complain. So clearly, that's a fact. My mom was too judgmental. Yes?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you. We're good
Yeah.
friends now. Excellent.
I validate you.
You're backing me up. All right, I appreciate it. Maybe question number 1 is a stupid question. Let's skip first question. Second question. Is it absolutely true? Absolutely is the key difference. It sounds like the first question, a little bit different. Is it 100% absolutely true? My mother is too judgmental and hard to please. What happened in that instance can only be explained because of my belief. Well, could I be 100% sure? There might be another reason. I don't know what that reason is, but I had to admit, it's not a law of physics that my mom is too judgmental and hard to please. So maybe it's not a fact. Okay, it's not an objective truth. It's my perception. So I had to admit, I couldn't be 100% sure it's true. Okay, now the third question. Who do I become when I hold on to that belief? When I believe that my mom is too judgmental and hard to please, how do I feel? I feel impatient. I feel annoyed. I'm short-tempered. I'm this 13-year-old version of myself that I don't really like. And now finally, the fourth question. Who would I be without that belief? So if I just entertain the idea that the belief doesn't exist, okay, it never existed, just let's pretend, okay, I have a magic wand, poof, that belief disappears completely. How do I feel? Well, I instantly felt lighter. I felt better. I felt calmer. I felt more at ease. I felt more like me. So what I determined in just 4 questions in 30 seconds, that the thing that I was sure was a fact, my mom is too judgmental and hard to please, wasn't really a fact. It was just a belief. That holding on to that belief left me worse off. I felt bad. And that letting go of it made me feel better. Okay? In just 4 questions. So now it's time for the turnaround. The turnaround asks us, could the opposite be true? Could the opposite be true? Not to change your mind. This is where people get stuck. They say, well, are you telling me to gaslight myself? Are you telling me to lie? Are you telling me to delude myself? No, your metaphor is wonderful about skiing down that mountain. You're just collecting options. You're just collecting routes, right? I call it a portfolio of perspectives. Just like you have a stock portfolio or maybe Pokemon cards or baseball. You're just collecting different perspectives. And you do that by asking yourself, could the opposite be true? Okay, it doesn't mean you have to change your mind. You have to realize that your brain hates changing its mind. Your brain hates changing its mind.
Yes, your brain is quite lazy, actually.
It's lazy, but it's also trying to protect you.
Yeah.
Because what is
Evolution.
what's that?
From evolution.
That's right.
Yeah.
Your brain's primary job is not to make you happy. Your brain doesn't care if you're flourishing. Your brain doesn't care if you're meeting your full potential. Your brain cares if you stay alive.
Yeah.
That's what your brain is trying to do. So we should thank our brains for having these limiting beliefs, because we have limiting beliefs so that the brain is making a bet that whatever you believed, whatever you did in the past, got you here and you're alive. And so if it worked for you in the past, keep doing it in the future. So your brain will constantly suck you back into passivity. It will constantly tell you, keep doing that, keep thinking that, because it worked for you in the past, got you here, didn't it? And so knowing that your brain hates changing its mind, you should anticipate this reflexive pushback. And you hear it all the time. You're going to hear this voice that says, yeah, but that can't be true because this is the way it is. This is a fact. Your brain will fight tooth and nail to keep you believing whatever it is you believe in the past, but we're going to do it anyway. Could the exact opposite be true? Not is it true, could it be true? So let's do it in my case. My belief was my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. What's the opposite? How could the opposite be true? The opposite would be my mother is not too judgmental and hard to please. Felt funny, didn't want to believe it, but let's try. How could it be true? Well, she did thank me for the flowers after all. She was just saying a statement of fact, right? The flowers weren't so nice. So maybe she was trying to help me. Maybe she just didn't want me to get scammed by this florist. Could be true. Okay, I don't have to believe it, but it could be true. Okay, now I have two beliefs. Let's try a third. The opposite of my mother is too judgmental and hard to please could be I am too judgmental and hard to please.
Projection.
How could that be true? Right? I didn't like that one at all, but how could that be true? Well, wasn't I the one who had stayed up till 1 a.m. rehearsing word for word the script that I had anticipated that my mom would tell me because I deserve to hear what a great son I am. And when I didn't hear those exact words, I lost it. So who was being judgmental? I was.
That's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Here's the hardest to swallow. Let's do a fourth one. The opposite of my mother is too judgmental and hard to please towards me could be I am too judgmental and hard to please towards myself. And that was actually the most true because what had happened, this is called a misattribution of emotion. It's a wonderful concept in psychology. Misattribution of emotion is when we feel bad on the inside, so we look for something to attribute it to on the outside. It's what they said to me. Can you believe what they said? It's what's happening in the news. It's this conflict that has nothing to do with me 1,000 miles away. That's why I feel crappy. That's why I'm annoyed. That person cut me off in traffic. There was a line that was too long. Somebody was rude to me. It's all that stuff outside. That's why I feel bad on the inside. And that's exactly what I did to my mom. I had misattributed the fact that I'd spent all this time and money doing something and it didn't work out. And so I felt like an idiot. I felt like I'd done something wrong. So I was attributing it to her. Now, Sarah, I have 4 beliefs, okay? I used to have 1. My mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Now I have 4. Which one is true? All of them? Which one is false? None of them? Who knows? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Beliefs are tools, not truths. The first belief, my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. I am bad at math. There's no time. I'm overwhelmed. Go on and on and on and on and on. Right? The reason that you think is a fact why you're suffering, there was only one way out. She had to change so I could stop suffering. You don't know my mom, Sarah, but that's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
You can't change people.
Exactly. You can't.
No.
And why should I depend upon it? And how many of us sit there and wait? You don't understand. When you said that thing you meant to her, it's perception. That's all it is. We don't even see our own reality clearly, as we talked about earlier. How do you possibly think you can see reality through someone else's eyes? You have no clue. When I accepted that and I didn't demand her to do anything, that I realized one of those other beliefs I could use as a tool to stop my own suffering. I was free. I was liberated. Now, does it mean I have to be best friends with her? No. Do we have to take long walks in the park and jump and skip every day? No, none of that. Doesn't mean any of that. It just means no matter what she does, I don't have to suffer. Doesn't mean I have to be with her every day, right? I can remove myself from the situation. That's also fine. It doesn't mean I have to suffer, though. And that changed everything.
Where does ego come into this?
Say more.
So to me, that can sound also like a bit of a deflation of the ego because a lot of that is like a protective mechanism, right? If my mum at least validates me for doing this, I feel like a good son. And I can think about that even in relationships in your partners, right? When you kind of having arguments. And it's like, if you could just see my side of this story. And, you know, the biggest part of relationship breakdowns is communication, right? And sometimes it can be ego statuses. Where does ego come into this?
I think asking yourself that same fundamental question of why am I suffering here? What's causing me suffering? Is it my partner doesn't validate me? My partner doesn't love me. Go on and on. We could probably think of 20 reasons why I feel disrespected and I deserve to be treated differently. And asking yourself, those same questions of, is it true? Is it absolutely true? Who am I when I hold that belief? And who would I be without that belief? No matter what the belief, if it's causing us suffering, looking for that different perspective can help us deal with that suffering, I think, in a much healthier way. Does that kind of answer your question, or is that still?
It does. I can just think that a lot of people with strong ego, because to me, when I was listening to that, I felt a weight lift as you were telling that story, right? Even just for yourself, I could kind of go, wow, you've all of a sudden come out of this like wall, right? The protection wall with the reaction that your mum didn't kind of open you, like kind of greet you with open arms, right? And it was like this suffering had gone, but it felt to me like a deflation of ego. That was kind of my interpretation. And it's kind of like that strong wall that we can all hold, which in business can get you quite far. It can also not, can make you lose your whole team. But like that strong ego can be helpful to an extent, but it can also completely barricade you inside inside yourself.
Yeah.
And you kind of build like a fortress around you with like dragons, and you're like, no one's getting in.
Yeah.
But the moment that you kind of like release that, and actually don't try to use the external changes and go towards, I mean, the kind of reflection back, the projection is hard for people to see. It's hard for people to go, well, no, it's not me, it's that person.
Right.
It's so much easier to
So
blame
much easier.
and say, well, it's them, it's not me.
Of course.
And sometimes it's really hard for people to even just see that. You know, I think about therapy, and therapy is a really interesting one when it comes to this, because sometimes you're telling a story to a therapist that maybe is confirming a narrative that you want to hear, right? Like how true is what you're saying in therapy actually true?
Yeah.
Is the therapist just reconfirming your beliefs, or are they challenging your beliefs?
It's a great, very controversial point that a lot of people will not like you for saying, because I think therapy, and of course, there's a million different flavors of therapy. It's like it's like a religion. There's all kinds of different sects and practices. I remember when I started my neuroscience master's program, the very first paper I did was, I thought, a ridiculous question. The question was, is talk therapy better than a placebo? So talk therapy being CBT, ACT, all kinds of talk therapy. Is talk therapy better than a placebo? And I looked at this and I said, are you crazy? Of course it's better than placebo. That's what we all do. We all have been told to go sit with somebody and, talk about our problems, and, we work through different methodologies. No, it's not better than a placebo.
Wow.
And I got an A on the paper. I got top scores. Turns out that what we think is happening, it's very hard to measure. Okay, there's caveat, asterisk, asterisk. There's lots more here. But turns out what's really giving us that benefit is a friend. It's just someone to listen to us, to help us talk about our problems. That's where we get the majority of the benefit from talk therapy. So I've been actually a bigger fan lately of something that's kind of gone out of style, which is group.
Community.
Yeah, well, group therapy.
Yeah.
Having like an Alcoholics Anonymous, it's kind of gotten a bad name because I think, people think, oh, you must think I'm really messed up if I go to group therapy. And I don't think so. I did.
Also, what's important about that? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, please.
You're hearing other people's perspectives.
There we go.
It's not, and you're being challenged. And I talk about this in the book. So there's a weight loss group in the UK that's funded by the NHS. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan because I'm not a fan of the foods. I don't like point systems. I don't like being told that this is a good food and this is a bad food. And it's not nutritionally dense, which is another problem. The thing I do like is that they go in and they share their struggles every week. When they feel like they're not enough, somebody else says, I also feel that way.
There we go.
This is the problem and the step that I made wrong.
Right.
This is how I got over it.
Right.
You're having those different slopes that are going down. So you're actually like, when you feel low, someone can lift you up.
And you see your own face reflected to you in someone else's experience.
Absolutely.
Because we all make up, that's fine. You got it wrong about your mom being judgmental and hard, but you haven't met my mom. My mom, right? Like that might be, diet would work for you, Sarah. I mean, look at you. That's going to work for you. That's not going to work for me. I've got funny genes. I've got big bones. I've told myself, as someone who used to be obese, I know all the reasons I came up with. The food industrial complex is conspiring to keep me overweight, and it's this and it's that. It's my trauma. It's that. I live in
America.
Yeah, all the reasons. And I think what's so powerful about listening to other people is two things. One, you hear your story reflected in other people. And so you can see your limitations without having to blame yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think one thing that people can sometimes misinterpret about these limiting beliefs, they think that what I'm saying is it's your fault. It's not your fault. You didn't choose these beliefs. Okay, they were chosen for you in your childhood, your experiences, your culture. You didn't choose these beliefs. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
That is the best line.
Yeah.
Responsibility is the number one key thing.
Because who else could it be? We're going to wait for the food companies or the government to fix it for us? Who else could possibly do it? So the idea here is, wait a minute. These beliefs were installed. This is the software I'm running. Why do I have to keep it? Right? Why can't I upgrade those beliefs? Why can't I take those out and say, and especially the ones that keep me stuck, right? The victim mindsets and the stories and no, we're the innocent one. They're to blame. Is it serving you? It's not based on what's true. That's the thing. We look for the evidence to show us this is a fact, this is an objective truth. Really, the question should be, is it helpful? That's the most important question. It's not, is it true? It's whether or not it's helpful. You know, and this is where sometimes I get some pushback and people say, well, you know, are you just telling people to lie to themselves, to gaslight themselves, to just delude themselves? You know, did you ever notice, this is a coincidence, but it's an interesting coincidence. Lie is in the word. Do you notice that? You can't spell belief without a lie. You see?
I love that. It's like you can't spell diet without die.
Yeah, that one's a stretch, but I'll take it.
Take the D off and you get diet. That's why you shouldn't be on a diet.
So it's a coincidence, but it's also a reminder, I think, because the thing that people don't realize when they say, okay, well, are you telling people just to pick whatever belief they want? Remember, the definition, again, of a belief is it's a conviction that is open to revision based on evidence. So it's not out of thin air. It's based on evidence. But also, we're already lying to ourselves. You think you're not lying to yourself? We're all lying to ourselves. We just pick the wrong belief. I don't have enough time. This is overwhelming. I'm not ready for this. I'm not good at math. This is too hard. We're already lying. We just picked the wrong lie. We picked the limiting belief versus the liberating one. So it's already something we're doing. We just need to pick better.
Well, talk to me about faith, right?
Okay.
Because in my book, I talk about the self-compassionate prayer. So I'm not religious. I'm a scientist. I'd love to believe that there's energy and something happens. I don't know. But I'm a big ritual person, right?
Yeah.
But the self-compassionate prayer is one of the tools that I have in the book. And I was very inspired by Robin Sharma, who came on the show, and he talks a lot about MVP and about doing kind of a prayer in the morning. And again, he says, I'm not also religious, but this is something that helps set my mindset up for the day. You talked about fact versus faith. Talk to me about how important it is. And I don't want this, obviously there is religion involved, but it doesn't always have to be religion, faith. I think faith, we automatically connect it to a religious belief, but I actually just kind of connect it just to a maybe hope or ritual is the way that I call it.
Yeah.
How important is kind of faith in our lives to help our beliefs?
Yeah. So when I was 6 years old, that was the last time I prayed. And I remember my family was going through a really tough time. We were in America for only 3 years, and my parents got scammed. Some local American saw there was a family that barely spoke English, and he took them for a ride, and they lost everything. And they had to rebuild from nothing. And I remember they had these terrible fights. They were on the verge of divorce. I can still kind of hear their shouting matches in my ears. And I remember I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and I would wake up early, and I would go outside on my driveway, and I would just look at the sky, and I would pray. And at the time, I thought I was talking to God. And it was very comforting because this voice told me things were going to be okay. And as I grew up, I stopped praying because I thought to myself, if I can't prove as a fact that anyone is listening, then who am I talking to? And I stopped. I also consider myself a scientist, and I want to see the evidence, and I want to, so I didn't really grow up with any kind of strong faith tradition at home. Yeah. So I stopped. And then as I was writing this book, it's a book about beliefs, and I kept seeing evidence about the power of faith, the power of prayer. And it was kind of annoying because turns out people who pray live longer, they make more money, they have more friends, they contribute more to the community. All these good things happen to people who pray. And I was kind of jealous that, that's nice, but I can't have that. And then I read a study that changed everything. They did a study where they had 3 groups of people. One group of people didn't pray, didn't do anything. That was a control group. Another group of people were people who prayed through some kind of faith tradition. So they were Christian or Jewish or Muslim, Buddhist. They were had some kind of faith tradition and prayed. A third group were people like me who didn't have a prayer practice, and they taught them how to pray. But they said, instead of the word God, you can substitute whatever you want that's meaningful to you. Mother Nature, sum of all forces, the universe, whatever is meaningful to you, please substitute that word. And what they found was that people who prayed with faith and people who prayed even without some kind of conviction in the supernatural both had significantly higher pain tolerance than the people who didn't pray. So there seems to be some kind of psychologically protective effect to the practice of prayer. So that's what I call, that prayer is possible even without faith. And the reason I think this is so important is that, in America, the largest religious community today are the nuns, not the Catholic nuns, the None, none, like no, don't have any religious affiliation. That's the largest religious denomination today. The trouble is that people who classify themselves as spiritual but not religious actually have higher rates of anxiety and depression disorder than people who are spiritual and religious.
Tell me more.
I get all the time, well, that can't be true. And first of all, look it up. I mean, this is what the studies show. I didn't make this up. This is based on the studies. So, as good as you think the studies are, they seem to show that spiritual but not religious has much higher rates of mental health issues. And I think part of the reason is, they say, don't remove a fence until you know why it was put there. And so what we're doing, and by the way, this is coming from the most skeptical, secular person you've ever met. I have a really tough time with anything supernatural. But
yes, because you want some evidence.
I want it to be a
me.
fact.
Yeah.
I want it to be a fact. So here's what I did. I went to 5 religious leaders. This is going to sound like the setup of a joke, but this is exactly what I did. I went to 5 spiritual leaders, a rabbi, a swami, a monk, an imam, and a priest, walk into a bar. But it sounds like a joke, right? I went to 5 religious leaders, and I asked them all the same question. Can I pray even when I have doubts about God? And I thought that they would kick me out. I was kind of hesitant. I thought they would say, heretic, get out of here. What are you doing? And you know what? They didn't do that.
Yeah, they welcomed you, right?
They welcomed me.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember the Rabbi Mordechai, he says to me, I'm sitting in his office, and he's full of books, and he's got this tiny space, and he tells me, he looks at me, he says, so, there's this omnipotent, omniscient, eternal being, and you don't have any questions? He's like, you don't have any doubts? So he tells me about how in the book of Exodus, the Israelites, when they're receiving the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, God gives them the 10 Commandments through Moses, and the Israelites say back, they say, Na'aseh v'nishma, which means we will do, and then we will hear. And he tells me, that's backwards. Think about that. That's backwards. Because first, if I want to convince you of something, first I have to tell you, hey, here's what you should do. And then first you hear it, then you do it if you agree with me. Mm-hmm. But that's not what they say. They say, first we will do, and then we will hear. And so he says, the believing part, the having the faith, isn't necessarily the requirement. And I thought that was amazing.
That is amazing.
That we can still pray. Like, nobody has a monopoly on prayer. Why can't I pray? I can pray. I can still have those protective effects. I can still benefit from it. It doesn't mean I have to have perfect faith in everything that the Holy Book says I have to buy hook, line, and sinker. I don't have to have blind faith. Why would I have to have blind faith? The problem is twofold. One, people like me, previously, I would tell myself, well, if I can't believe everything, then I want nothing. I don't want anything to do with it. If I can't prove everything's a fact, I think that's pretty close-minded because I was missing out on all these benefits. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the religious institutions, nobody's asking the Pope if he believes everything.
Yeah.
Right? So why is it that when I step into a religious institution, I need to have also a faith test? I need to buy everything the way that religious leader says it is, but the religious leader down the street thinks it's a completely different interpretation? No. So I think we're really missing out. And I think the answer to this question of why do people who affiliate as spiritual and not religious, why do they have these mental health issues? It's because they're not participating in a community. The father told me, the priest told me, he said, people come to church and they think it's like a cosmic slot machine. That they say, they pray for this, they pray for that, I want this, I want that. I need, my business is not doing well, I need money, somebody's sick in my family, I want them to be healthy, I want love in my life, I want. And he says what they don't realize is that by coming to church, that's where God fulfills miracles. That's where he fulfills these requests, because the person down the pew, if you're looking for love, that might be the love of your life. The person who's, who you meet could help you with your business. That's where God makes these wishes happen. And I think for people like us, these secular communities, they don't last. The Sunday assembly, the atheists, they don't have that bonding community. So I'm kind of on a crusade, for lack of better words, to help us say, hey, you know what? We don't have to have blind faith in everything in order to have a belief that the practice is beneficial, that participating in the community, to going somewhere where you know that people in that congregation have an obligation to take care of you and that you have an obligation to take care of others. That's incredibly healthy. And I think we should go back to that. So that's.
I think we're losing that, right? We're losing because we're becoming more isolated than ever before. And I think that is the incredible part about faith. And I was similar, right? So I grew up with a very atheist father and a Christian mother. So I was kind of in this household where it was like, you decide.
Yeah.
And so I had both shapes. The thing that I connected to a lot was Buddhism, because I'm very into philosophy. And so I found that very interesting. And when I went to Japan, I absolutely loved Japan. And a lot of my book has a lot of Japanese philosophy in it. Do I still know essentially what I believe in? No, I'm kind of figuring it out as I go.
Yeah.
But the rituals I find incredible.
Japan is actually an amazing case study in that, because unlike in the West, where there's a lot of people who are spiritual and not religious, the Japanese, the Shinto, are religious but not spiritual.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They do the rituals because it's part of it's what it feels like to be Japanese to them. But the spiritual, when you ask them, wait a minute, do you actually believe there's a supernatural thing that works this way? No, but they do the ritual.
Exactly. This is a thing. And I think that's why I put it in the book, because I open it in the book by saying I grew up watching American films where people say grace and I couldn't connect to it. I was very much in a similar mindset to you, but uncovering the research that you can live like 4 to 14 years longer with some of the research from Harvard, I was like, well,
why are we doing this?
Have I missed out on this massive...
If it was a vitamin, we would all be taking it. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just think also, do you know what it gives you? It gives you just a moment for yourself.
Yes.
Even if, we're thinking not about it just gives you a moment to connect to being a bit more mindful. We live in a very mindless world, right? We're constantly doing. And just having that moment of whatever that ritual is and whatever practice you are and whatever you're doing something for you and you're becoming mindful.
Right.
And when we're more mindful, we make 90% more logical decisions. When we're mindless, we make 90% more emotional decisions.
Right. And it's different from meditation. I think meditation is great. That's got its own practice, but it's a very, very different practice. Prayer seems to be a form of, done correctly, is a form of problem solving almost. Like sitting with an idea, with a thought, thinking through it. When I ask, and people say, well, if I'm not praying to the supernatural, what do I pray for? And I don't pray for things. I pray for beliefs, for mindsets that help me overcome them no matter what comes. So I'm not asking for things to be worked out. I'm not asking for good things to happen. I'm asking for patience. I'm asking for the right beliefs. I'm asking for strength to overcome whatever might happen. And that's just that daily reminder, wishing for patience, reminding myself. So when I pass by a temple or a church, if the door's open, I'm going to go in.
Yeah. Right?
There's no requirement that I have to agree to everything in order to step inside. There's that feeling that you get in a house of worship that I think is a beautiful first step, or even just taking 10 minutes in the morning and focusing on that time to problem solve through what you can do about it. Right.
Well, sometimes what I also pray for is it connects me to the gratitude, because we have a very big negativity bias in our brains, right? And we'll normally remember all the things that have gone wrong or all the things you've got to do in the day. And sometimes when I just sit down, I'm like, just give me a minute. Like, what am I grateful for today?
Right.
Because that is also really important practice to help change your beliefs.
Right.
Right. The gratitude, you don't have to be grateful for everything, but it's really important just to try and connect to one thing that happened today that you can be grateful for.
That's way bigger than you are. I always like to do this like cosmic reflection of when I go into a house of worship, and I think of what am I grateful for. The math, the probabilities of why you're here right now. If you ever, I don't know if maybe it's just me, but
Isn't
when
it
I
a
reflect on
ridiculous
that,
number, right?
about that the sun has to be a certain distance away from Earth so that we are not frozen or all burned up, and that 3.4 billion years of evolution got us here, 200,000 years of human history, that the sperm had to find the egg within your mother and father just so that it could happen exactly this way, and that you're alive today to be here and listening to the sound of my voice, like the odds. Just
Are against
the
us.
odds.
Yeah. Well, this brings me to luck.
Yeah.
Like some people say, well, that person was just lucky.
Mm.
You know, some people think that, you know, people are more lucky than others.
Mm.
I mean, I feel like maybe being born is luck.
The ultimate
Right.
luck, right? Yeah.
But what about after that? Are people more lucky than others? Do people not have more of a luckier life?
Well, regardless
Easier
of,
path?
yeah, okay, there's definitely I think you'd have to be blind to say that there isn't a distribution of good fortune, right? If you're lucky enough to be listening to this podcast on your smartphone, you won the cosmic lottery, right?
Yeah.
You won the human lottery, because there are billions of people who are in poverty today, living hand to mouth. So yes, there is definitely a distribution of where people fall out. What's interesting though is that we can also make our own luck, and that's, that I like to say, luck isn't chance.
It talks about Warren Buffett.
Is it? How so? Does he say that too? I didn't know that. What does he say?
I can't remember the line. Let me find it.
And the reason I say that you can actually make your own luck is that they did this experiment that I love, where they took two groups of people. One group of people were people who identified as lucky. It wasn't a fact. They didn't follow them around to see if they were lucky. They just asked you, do you think you're a lucky person or an unlucky person? People who said, I think I'm a lucky person, versus another group, people who said, I am an unlucky person, self-identified, totally a belief, okay? Then they asked them to do a very simple task. The task was, they gave them a newspaper, same newspaper, both groups, and they said, we want you to look through this newspaper and just count how many pictures you see in the newspaper. How many images do you see, okay? The unlucky group, to do this task, took on average 2.5 minutes. The lucky group took just 11 seconds. Why the difference? Huge difference.
That's massive difference.
Massive difference. On page 2 of this newspaper, one of the images said in big bold letters, there are 43 images in this newspaper. Collect your reward. The people who believed they were lucky opened the newspaper on page 2, saw the image, read what it said, got up from the chair, collected their prize, and were out the door in 11 seconds. The people who believed they were unlucky sat there and counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 2.5 minutes. Now, what's fascinating, they counted correctly. We know they saw that picture because they counted 43 images. But remember those 11 million bits of information? That information of what was in that image never crossed through their conscious attention. It never made it through those 50 bits of information of conscious awareness. So even though they saw it, it never processed. Their brains saw that information, but it never crossed the conscious awareness. So this is how we make our own luck, because something about their beliefs, stuff like that never happens to me. It can't be that easy, right? When we think that about ourselves, I'm an unlucky person, we literally see reality differently. They didn't see the opportunity that was right under their nose.
So you would say then that an optimist is way more lucky than a pessimist?
We know that entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, way more optimists than pessimists, right? We call this entrepreneurial alertness, that entrepreneurs have this quality where they can see things, literally see things that other people can't see. We know that people who are on a diet see food as larger, that people who are afraid of heights see distances as further, that your brain warps its perception of reality, just like that checkerboard illusion or the coffer illusion. Your brain will warp what it thinks is reality based on what you believe. And so that's why some people, some entrepreneurs see dollar bills all over the floor. They just see opportunity everywhere, and the rest of us see nothing because of their beliefs.
Well, how do you become less pessimistic then?
I think you constantly remind yourself of those 4 questions. I think inquiry-based stress reduction is the way to go, is reminding yourself that you don't see reality clearly, asking yourself if this belief, if your source of suffering is causing you, is true. And then the more you do it, the more you find that your world expands. So for example, I started with my mom. That was one of the most tangible breakthroughs, that the bad feelings I constantly had around her. Who wants to be around a person who's judgmental and hard to please? What did that do to my motivation level to work on that relationship? It went way down, even
And it's
as my
also
suffering went up.
conditional love, right?
Say more?
So conditional love is when you become loved by what you achieve or what you're how you're perceived, right?
Yeah.
So if you're growing up in a household that, you get love when you get a good grade
Yeah.
or when you do something good, but nothing else, you get this like condition. And so every time somebody says, this is amazing, I'm so glad that you did this for me, or well done on this achievement, it's a constant kind of perpetual of conditional love. So you kind of learn that unless I get, love from what I've done,
Yeah.
your kind of self-esteem plummets otherwise.
Yes, and you're a grown-up.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe that anymore.
Exactly.
That's a limiting belief, right? That my suffering is determined based on what my parents do or did. This is my big beef with trauma and how, the body keeps the score. Oh boy, this is a whole nother can of worms that we can open up here. Today, trauma used to mean something very different. Trauma used to mean, shell shock from war. PTSD was something that you experienced, when you had been to battle, and then it kind of went into everyday life. And now, somebody says something that I didn't like. That was trauma. That my parents set high expectations for me. Somebody yelled at me. Somebody did something bad to me, and it's become trauma. And it turns out that that's problematic because we can't change the past. And even the past we think we remember turns out isn't true. That, we think human memory is like a video camera, that we record every detail. And that is so not true. The studies find that we are constantly reconstructing our past, that every time you have a memory, you're changing it a little bit. Elizabeth Loftus did this amazing work where she found that she could implant all kinds of memories into people. For example, telling people that they had been on a hot air balloon ride that they hadn't gone on. And not only would they remember the hot air balloon ride, they would tell you about the shirt they wore and the wind blowing through their hair and all these details. I remember when I was writing this book, I have a good friend who I meet for coffee every once in a while. And we sat down together and I told him what I was working on and this stuff about memory. And he says, I have to tell you something, my whole life, I've had so much trouble with my relationships with women because they tell me that I'm not emotionally available enough. Because you see, a problem I've always had since I was 8 years old is that I can't cry. I have not cried since I was 8 years old. And I said, why? What happened at 8 years old? And he says, when I was 8 years old, my cousin died. I had a young cousin, a child cousin. And I went to his funeral and I saw everybody so grief-stricken that I decided from that day forth, I was never going to cry again. Until I told my sister what I was struggling with. I told her about how this was affecting my relationships. And it's all because of this funeral that I went to when I was 8 years old. And my older sister looked at me and said, you never went to that funeral. I was at that funeral. You were home with the babysitter. He had conflated this thing that had never happened, and it had caused him suffering for decades. Now, does that mean that every trauma, everything that happened to you didn't happen? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm pretty sure about, it didn't happen the way you think it happened. Because every time we rerun that tape, we're changing it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And so what actually happened many times can be completely different than what actually occurred. And even if, I'll grant you, even if it happened exactly the way you remember, and I've seen some pretty traumatic stuff. I went to a retreat where Byron Katie was working with people who have gone through stuff that you cannot imagine, the worst of the worst. And using that exact same process, is it true? What's causing me suffering? Is it absolutely true? How do I feel when I hold on to it? And who would I be without that belief? What you realize is that the same exact event, no matter how horrific, one person can take that event and say, you see, my father was an alcoholic and he beat me, and that's why I'm downtrodden. That's why I struggle so much. Another person can take the exact same type of event. My father was an alcoholic and beat me, and you see, that's why I'm successful. I had to prove him wrong. So it's our interpretation. It's our beliefs of whether it serves us to keep thinking that what happened to us back then is why we are struggling today, why we are suffering, or is it post-traumatic growth? There's two kinds. Yeah. It's post-traumatic stress as well as post-traumatic growth. And it's all about the interpretation of that story. And I think I'm not talking about the very severe cases. That's not what we're talking
Yeah.
about. But
Yeah.
the popularization, and most importantly, what I'm really talking about is the self-diagnoses that we see online, where people saying, "Oh,
don't.
this is all
Instagram.
happening because of what's happened to me in the past." Is that really serving you? Not sure.
How helpful do you think Instagram is with relationships? Because I've got to the point where I feel like I need to unfollow anyone who talks about relationships online. Because one of my friends said the other day, she came to me, she talked about her relationship. And she was just like, it's driving me mad. Every time I look online, I'm being told a different belief system about what's right in a relationship, what's wrong in a relationship, the green flags, the yellow flags, the red flags. There's this constant overstream, right, of all the things on what a perfect relationship looks like. Or I don't know, I'm sure anyone listening to this will maybe connect to it, like the 5 things to know you with the right partner. And you just kind of get this belief system in your brain that's being fed to you externally that challenges maybe what your gut is actually trying to tell you.
Super interesting. This is not something I talk about much, but it's been I've been married for 25 years in September. It'll be
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we've known each other since I was 19, so even longer than that. And it's been a while since since I've heard. I will tell you one of the things well before I started this research on beliefs, I remember with my wife, I hope I'm not offending her saying this, but I did not fall in love with her immediately. I didn't think she was so wildly attractive. I mean, I know you're not supposed to say that, right? You're supposed to say, "Oh, the first time I saw her, she was the most beautiful woman in the world." No, she wasn't. But the longer we spent together, now I think she's the most beautiful person in the world. Now, when I see her, like I'm getting goosebumps even talking about her, because I literally see her differently. Like she physically, I don't know if I'm sure this has happened to you. You see somebody, you're like, wow, that person is gorgeous. Like that is an incredibly sexy person. And then they open their mouth. Have you noticed this? And they physically become ugly.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's like the opposite of beer goggles.
Yes, literally.
Right?
Yeah.
Why? It's because of our beliefs, because of how our beliefs shape how we see the world. And so I think there's some kind of secret there. There's some kind of magic that happens that when you build that trust with somebody, when you go the years together, and you're able to solve problems. Like somebody asked me, about my relationship recently, and they're like, "How do you fight with your wife? Like, how do you get through stuff? How do you fight?" I said, "I don't. What do you mean by fight? Like, what do you mean? Like, when you, I don't know what that means. Like, my love language is changing my mind. Right? We get so defensive when someone disagrees with us. That's a belief. It's a belief. And by the way, you can see this in different cultures. I know it's a belief because it's not a universal human trait. That in some cultures, disagreeing is what is great. It's honored. In fact, in my family, that was the case. That we would, when we had family dinners, you were expected to come with an opinion to defend, so we could argue about it. And in other cultures, no. When you disagree with somebody, that's very disrespectful. So it's just a belief set. So I love it when if someone I trust and I believe is a smart person that I admire comes to me with a different opinion. That's not a fight. That's an opportunity, right? I want to see things a little different. I want to see how I'm seeing reality incorrectly, because I have the intellectual humility to know that I don't see reality clearly. None of us see reality clearly. And so if somebody else that I trust sees things a little differently, well, that's an opportunity for me to get a better sense of how the real world is. So it's something that I think, we welcome that opportunity. It's never adversarial. It's something that's an opportunity.
So how do you get to that part in conflict then? So you're both kind of coming in from very different sides. How do you get to the part where you agree to disagree or overlap and can see one another's point of view? How does one ego not become more inflated than the other, or trying to prove yourself right? Because that's a big part.
I think that's absolutely a big part, because once a disagreement goes into this land of trying to prove someone right, we shut down.
Yeah.
Right. We foreclose on that conversation.
Yeah.
This is the way I am. We talked about how labels are so dangerous. And once it stops becoming a discussion to find a better
solution.
way, and a solution, and it becomes defending positions. So one of the best things you can do, this is kind of my line on geopolitics, on why I don't talk politics, because if you can't steelman the other side's argument, if you can't present in good faith exactly what the other side would think in a way that would convince someone on your side, shut up. You do not deserve to have an opinion publicly. I mean, of course you can. I'm not saying you should do anything legally. You can say whatever you want. It's a free country, thankfully. But if you can't represent the other side in a way that they would say, yeah, that's exactly what I believe, you should not be spouting your opinion on social media about some geopolitical conflict you don't know jack about, because you can't represent both sides. And the same could be said about our arguments interpersonally. So one of the best things that I've done with my wife in terms of solving these, we don't always agree. We definitely have different perspectives. But it's never adversarial, because one of the first things we do is, okay, let me understand this correctly. Is this what you're saying, such and such and such? And until she says, yep, that's exactly what I'm saying, we got to keep doing that. Like, unless I can actually say, is that what you're saying? And she says, yes, that's right. Because most of it is just that we are talking past each other, right? That we assume based on our beliefs. Well, when you said that, you tried to hurt my feelings, and you're trying to, no, I didn't, that almost never, it happens sometimes, but if you've gotten to the point where you're trying to hurt each other's feelings, that's already, it's already in a bad place. What 99 times out of 100, it's a misunderstanding, right? I remember one time I was looking for a coffee mug or something, and my wife said something like, all the dishes are in the sink. And I heard that as, you haven't washed the dishes in the sink, when she was just saying a statement of fact, all the dishes are in the sink. But you can see how that little statement, right? It was my responsibility after dinner to wash the dishes or something. And I took it as, oh, you meant this. But it was because I was coloring reality based on my beliefs.
Right.
When if I just took a step back and asked myself, even without asking her, just asking myself, she didn't have to do anything. I was causing myself suffering because I had inserted a belief I hadn't done the dishes, and if I hadn't done the dishes, I was doing something wrong, that she was judging me. But really, I was judging that whole situation. I was causing my own suffering. How did I know what she was saying or what the intent behind it? I knew the words, right? We both heard the same exact words, but that's not the complete information set. There's so much more to that. And I had projected onto it that she was trying to hurt me, that she was trying to say something. And so one of the I think secrets to a long-lasting relationship, and one of these liberating beliefs that I now tell myself all the time, is an answer to this question. So the question is, how do you measure love? We said, when someone says, I love you so much, what's the so much? What does that mean? I love you so. Why do you love one person more than the other? Or like a close family member, why do you love them more than you love somebody else? And my answer to that is that love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. Love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. What do I mean by that? I remember the day my daughter was born. She's 17 now, but I remember the day she was born, I was the first to get to wash her. I gave her very first bath. And they gave me my daughter, and she was exactly this big, from my elbow to my fingertips. That's exactly how big she was. I'll never forget it. I'm going to cry here. I remember the first time I washed her, and I looked at her, and I remember thinking that she could do no wrong. Like, I loved her so much. This human that wasn't in my life the day before, and now she's here. And I remember just my heart filling, I loved her more than anything. There was nothing that she could do that would possibly upset me in any way. If she cried, or if she pooped, or she needed something, all the benefit of the doubt. When a baby cries, it's insane to say a baby's crying to hurt my feelings, right? Of course, a baby's crying because it's the best they can do. That's all they have. It's the only tool they have, is to cry because they need something. They can't ask you, oh, please, I'd like some milk now. That's all they've got. And so I gave her all this benefit of the doubt. And you know what, Sarah? We're all big babies.
Yeah.
We're all big babies. We all just grow up, and we all are doing the best we can. So my mom, for example, just like I wouldn't expect my baby daughter to do anything but cry. It's the only tool she had. My mom acts the way she acts because it's the only tool she has. It's like me asking her to speak Latin. She doesn't speak Latin.
Yeah.
Why would I expect her to act the way I want her to act? She's not trying to hurt me. That's the best tool she has. Even when she is trying to hurt me, that's the best tool she has. And so having that liberating belief, love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. We're all operating with the tools we have. That's a liberating belief. So I'll tell you something that's not in the book, is what happened after I wrote this chapter. I had to tell her. I couldn't
I've been wanting
publish
to
the book.
ask you
Yeah.
this question, like,
So here's
what's
what
your
happened.
relationship with your
Okay.
mom like now?
So here's what happened. So
Does she-
I sent her the chapter because I had to get her approval before I could put it in the
Yeah, of
book. I didn't
course.
want millions of people to read it before she did. So I sent her the chapter and she read it. And I honestly believe that she was going to call me and say, wow, you really were very introspective. You took responsibility for your feelings. Of course, that's not what she said. What she said was, I told you those flowers were garbage. So can I tell you, okay, can I be honest with you and tell you it didn't hurt?
Yeah.
Of course I felt pain from it.
Yeah.
My initial gut reaction.
Yeah.
I felt pain.
Yeah.
But it didn't become suffering. It didn't become suffering. You know why? Because now instead of saying, there she goes again, she's so judgmental, she's doing it again, she's always like this. Why does she do this to me? Why is she trying to hurt me? I had a new liberating belief. The new liberating belief was, we're all working with the tools we have. This is the best she knows how. Okay, we're all operating with the tools we have.
You basically gave her compassion.
That's right. Yeah, because beliefs are tools, not truths. The belief of giving compassion, the belief of we're all operating with tools we have, but the belief of love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you didn't mean to hurt me when you said that. That I was doing that to myself. That was my own cage that I was living in my own prison. And that liberated me. I'm out of my cage now. I don't have to suffer when I hear that anymore. Still feel pain, but it's not suffering.
I mean, I connect to that so much because everything that I think that I relate to everything that you say about the belief system and the kind of my writing in this book is the next step on the compassion, right? Getting compassion to yourself and compassion to others to like actually move forward and change those. Because if you can't extend the compassion out and you can't extend the compassion inwards, you get stuck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And compassion just helps you kind of go, right, yeah, this is where I am. And that's why I hate positive thinking. Because if someone tells me to think positively when I'm pissed off, like I'm like, well, I would if I could.
That's right.
Like, of course I would.
Yeah.
But also, we have 180 emotions. We're meant to experience them all. Doesn't mean we have to drown ourselves in them, right?
Yeah. My favorite is when someone tells you to calm down. Yeah.
That is the perfect
Has that
British
ever worked?
analogy. Keep calm and carry on.
Yeah. Has that ever worked, ever, when you said to somebody, calm down? I never thought of that. Thanks.
Didn't think of that.
I appreciate that. Calm down. What a concept.
I know, it's really annoying, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. It is. And I think that's the same thing as like, well, just manifest. Well, like just positive vibes only, bro. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
what
think
do
it
you
works that
say
way.
when you see that online? Like, what do you say when, I mean, I was in a podcast the other day about my book and somebody kind of interpreted my work as manifestation, which had never been in the book. Actually, I kind of say, you can't just sit there and fall in self-pity and kind of go, this is all going to happen to me. I obviously believe in like looking forward and visualizing to things that, you want to, if you can't ever see where you're going to go, then you're never going to get there. You got to have some type of visual to
For
the
sure.
direction you're heading in, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise it's just like, you're kind of just sitting there, not
But
knowing
that's where
where
they
you're
stop.
going. Exactly.
Right.
But then you have to do the work.
That's right. And most important, I think there's a step even before doing the work is what am I going to do psychologically when it's painful?
Well, this is why you have to set yourself up for the worst case scenarios and not always the best case scenarios, right? And that's where I had the willpower argument, which is when someone said to me on the panel yesterday, is it all about willpower? And I said, the problem with willpower is you create willpower without any friction. And friction is part of every single day life. And so when you're looking at setting yourself up for the best case scenario, of course you're going to have quote unquote strong willpower. But your day isn't the best case scenario. You should be setting yourself up for the worst scenarios.
Right.
And on the worst scenarios, if you can keep that behavior going, on the best days, you'll be flying.
That's right.
But we never think about the worst case scenarios.
So true. And for me, what really helped was those little things. Like, for example, the other day I was at home and I dropped something. I dropped a glass. And before that would have really pissed me off, right? Like, just dropped this glass. God, why do I always do this? I'm so clumsy. Why does this happen? Now I'm late to a meeting. And now it sounds funny, but it's really helpful. I said, I get to practice patience. I get to practice patience, right? Like that's an opportunity for me to, it's pointless, it's meaningless. It was a $2 glass, who cares? I get to practice patience. And that's driven by belief, right? So this is what it feels like to get better. On my weight loss journey, when I could switch from, we talk a lot about, I'm not sure if you ever experienced this, but a lot of people who struggle with their weight, we feel this food shatter.
Food
And that's
noise.
food noise. And that's what they say that GLP-1s help
Yeah.
fix is the food noise.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is because we think food noise is bad.
Mm.
I still feel food noise all day. Like I
Really?
want to eat everything. Yeah,
Wow.
of course. But it's not bad. It's the belief that it's bad that's the problem. It's not the pain, it's the suffering that's the problem. It's the interpretation that food noise is bad. What's wrong with food noise? This is an opportunity, just like when I drop the glass, it's an opportunity for me to practice patience. Hey, this is an opportunity. I get to practice this new belief that this is what it feels like to get better. Part of getting better is saying, yep, I hear you, brain. I know you want to eat. I got it. That's my evolutionary background. Cool. And this is what it feels like to get better. Because when you practice that, there are those moments when I don't feel food noise, right? I don't feel it 24 hours a day. It just comes when I'm stressed, when I'm lonely, when
Exhausted.
I'm bored. Yeah, when I'm exhausted, when I'm ashamed. Like that's
Yeah.
when I feel the food noise. So knowing, hey, you know what? I just went through that stressful situation and I didn't feel food noise. Okay, this is what it feels like to get better. So you're almost like keeping track. You know, what one of the things that the brain tricks us into thinking is that we only remember the worst moments, right? We give a speech, we give a talk in front of our board members or whatever, in front of our boss, and we remember where we mess up. We don't remember the entire talk where we did a great job
100%.
because we have that negativity bias of all the bad parts. And it's the same with food noise or any kind of painful sensation. It's keeping track of, wait a minute, is that always true? Is that always the case that I always have bad willpower, that I'm never able to do that? Or is it just that, hey, this is something I'm struggling with, this skill I'm improving, and that this is part of the process?
Do you think perfectionists struggle with this more?
I don't believe in perfectionism.
Tell me more.
It's a limiting belief. I don't believe in imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome I hate even more because it sounds real. It sounds like, doctor, you know, I have imposter syndrome and gonorrhea. You know, like it's like it sounds like it's a thing. It's not a thing. It's not in the DSM. It's not in any kind of medical journal. There's no imposter syndrome. It's perfectionism and imposter syndrome is what people like me, and I'm guessing people like you, tell ourselves in order to justify not doing stuff. Oh, you know what? I'd really love to. I really would love to give that presentation. But you see, I'm a perfectionist and I'm not going to have the time to do it to my standards. Right? Or you see, I have imposter syndrome. So that's why I'm no good at making those sales calls, or I don't want to go out and put my neck out for that leadership position because, you know, I have imposter syndrome. I'm not. It's a story. It's a belief.
So you don't think some people are more specific, like type A's? You don't believe in them either? Kind of people that are like very diligent in how they do their work and how they see themselves and all of those things, and high achievers, I guess.
Well, high achievers, I mean, that's an outcome. That's already happened. Type
Right.
A, it's not a thing either. There's no type A in the psychology literature. Even you know, the big 5 personality traits, Ocean, you know, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, neuroticism, even that we're now challenging as something that is way less stable than we thought. We used to think that your personality is your personality. Nuh-uh, not true. And in fact, nobody who actually studies personality traits will tell you that anymore, that our personality traits fluctuate.
Yeah.
Why do they fluctuate? Based on our beliefs. Based on our beliefs. That if you believe, for example, that people are not trustworthy, you're going to be more neurotic. Of course you will be.
Yeah.
Right? It's personality is downstream of our beliefs. So this is called identity foreclosure. When we believe I am this kind of person, that's it. We're done. End of story. And everything we will do will justify. It's basically what we talked about earlier, the lucky and the unlucky person saw reality differently. If you believe that is who you are, I am a perfectionist, you're going to see every piece of evidence to make that true because you're looking
You're
for
constructing it,
Exactly.
basically.
That's right, based on your beliefs.
Wow. So what should we be saying to ourselves if well, I guess a lot of people go, oh, I'm lazy, or I just don't have the motivation that you have, or I'm give myself too much motivation and I burn out. You know, there's all these different types of label, which we kind of mentioned earlier, that you don't like labels. But I mean, that is how people identify themselves. So like, what should one be saying to each other or to themselves instead of saying, I am X?
Yeah. I think the most helpful step, the best protocol is not to adopt someone else's liberating belief, but to construct your own, because then it becomes more meaningful. So for me, you know, I showed you how meaningful it was when I I came up with love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. That's like, that to me really resonated. Or we're all operating from the tools we have. Like coming
Yes.
up with your own belief set. Now, what's magical about this is that you don't have to stick with a belief after you try it on. It's almost like when you go to get a new pair of shoes. Okay, you've done enough of the work to recognize that your shoes are smelly and you have a hole in it and they need to be replaced. Okay, so you've recognized you have a limiting belief. You go to the shoe store. You don't look at the shoe store window and say, "Oh, just give me that pair. I like the way that one looks." That's like adopting someone else's liberating belief. Rather, you look at it and you say, "You know what? Let me try that on a size smaller, size bigger. I want to walk around the store with it. I want to see if this shoe feels good. Does it serve me? Is it a good shoe?" Same with beliefs. If a particular, so you're looking first for the suffering. So we know that the status quo isn't working. That does calling yourself a perfectionist or saying you have imposter syndrome or saying you have a chronic, brain condition like I have with ADHD, is that actually serving me? Maybe if I looked at a different perspective, let me try it on. Let me try on, as opposed to saying I have a chronic brain disease because I have ADHD. Let me try on, I'm learning a new skill. Let me try it on. Let me try it for a week. How do I feel? How do I perform? I instantly saw that things changed. I was more motivated. So what's the definition of a limiting versus a liberating belief?
Yeah.
A limiting belief is a belief that decreases your motivation and increases your suffering. So if you have a belief, if you have it's something that you are sure is a fact, test that by asking yourself, what does it do to your motivation level? When I believed that my ADHD was a chronic brain disease,
Yeah, of course. It's totally demotivating.
how motivated am I? Right?
See, I just think of it as a superpower.
Right.
Like I genuinely do.
That's a great example of you're saying, well, how do we adopt those new beliefs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've written 3 bestsellers with
Yeah.
ADHD. So it's not that I have this chronic brain disease that caused me to get distracted. You know when I get distracted? When I'm working on stuff I don't like to work on.
Yeah. So it
That's-
basically just filters out the stuff that you shouldn't be doing.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Everybody experiences that. That's
Yeah.
universal, whether you have ADHD or not. When it's something boring, I don't want to work on it. I get crazy distracted.
Yeah.
But when it's something I'm really into, so the superpower that comes with ADHD.
Hyper focus.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Which is also a story, which is also a belief, but that's a belief that really serves me,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to keep it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things, right? The superpower analogy, I think, is so goddamn important because I think, we can always get stuck in the thing. And I think it's important to have awareness on like, these are the things. For instance, I got a train home yesterday. I was exhausted. I got on the wrong train. I was going on a train to Plymouth. I was meant to be coming back to London. And then I was like, I've got on the wrong train. I'm going the wrong way. I know that when I can be very easily distracted because I'm trying to do everything else. But I think it's just important to have the awareness because then you can take the responsibility on it. So now I check myself before and I'm like, just make sure you check that train because when you're tired, your brain just quickly shuts off to something else that doesn't really care where the train's going. So I think there's that importance, right, of having the awareness. But you said the most important word of all of it, which is responsibility. Because when somebody blames their behaviors just on their ADHD, that's not taking responsibility, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, okay, we normally we might be late. Well, I need to make sure that I'm not late because if I know that that's a tendency that I can have, I've got to work extra hard.
Right. Whereas like
to make sure I'm not.
Totally. So like we talked about earlier of aging involves inevitable decline. So having ADHD is causing me all this heartache and there's nothing I can do about it versus growth is possible at any age.
100%.
I'm learning. Yeah. So I missed the train. Hey, I'm learning. Growth is possible at any age.
Yeah.
Like what does that do to your motivation level and your suffering? So one thing, we've adopted in my family, which is not true, but is a great tool, is whenever something nice happens, we say, it sounds silly, I'm kind of embarrassed to share it, but this is what we do. We say, everything good happens to us, right? So it's not, we're not pulling out, we're not faking it, okay? When something, even if it's something minor, we get to the airport and there's no line and, security is fast. Everything good happens yeah, right? Everything good happens to us. Or, something simple happens, I don't know, some simple pleasure in life. We're noticing those moments more, right? Is it true that everything good happens to us? Of course it's not. Bad things happen in everybody's life. But marking those moments makes you actually see more of them because now you're aware of them. You're looking for them in your life. So everything good happens to us. And you know what? Even if it doesn't actually change reality, you can't change facts. Facts are facts. But you can definitely change your perception of those facts. So the same exact things can happen to you. I missed my train, right? I got on this train versus that train. Okay. Like, what's the opportunity here? How do I choose to see this? What's the learn?
Mhm.
I'm growing, and growth is possible at any age. I'm going to get better at that next time.
Yeah, 100%. I
Right.
just know to make sure I read the train board
Mhm.
properly next time when I'm tired.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
that's the only kind. And I called my best friend, so it's great. I got to talk to her on the phone for like 20 minutes, which was a
Amazing.
massive, great outcome. So I have to leave it. What was the kind of biggest belief that's changed your mind recently?
The biggest belief that's changed my mind recently. I mean, the one that's had the most impact is the one with relationships.
Mm.
Because it kind of radiated from when I changed the relationship with my mom. It also really changed my relationship with my daughter. So my daughter's a teenager, and she's 17 now. But when I was writing the book, she was a few years younger, and we kind of had more of a rocky relationship. It wasn't as good as it is now. And I think a big reason why that changed was because when I figured out that I was causing the suffering in this relationship with my mom, I also realized that I was causing suffering in the relationship with my daughter, that I was doing to her what my mom was doing to me, that I was making my daughter feel judged. And when I realized that and I started to stop it, I started to repeat these limiting beliefs. I started to repeat these liberating beliefs in my own life of we're all operating with the tools we have. Love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. Our relationship completely changed. Like, we are really good friends now. I mean, there's nothing better for a father than a teenage daughter that wants to spend time with him. I mean, that's the best, because there's
It's
all
the
these stereotypes
best.
about teens. They're rebellious. They're this. They're that. It's been amazing. Like, she's a friend. Like, I like to
that.
spend time with her. Like, we have time dedicated to hang out. And if I have an appointment or I have to move the time, she wants the time. Like, she really, she asks me to spend that time together. And that's been amazing. I think that would not have happened before I learned about this research and before I started practicing this in my life. So that's been the biggest change.
I mean, I think it's so powerful. I think, you know, reading your book, I felt so aligned reading
Thank
your
you.
book. And I do think that it makes me sad, but optimistic that this is now kind of coming out, like the importance of our mindset. And you know, you said something, either it was on air or off air, like how we're going to look at psychiatry in the next 20 years. I think we're going to really change how we're treating people. Because I even think about the beliefs that we interpret, but also even how our healthcare providers kind of give us diagnosis and how they treat us and all of those things. I think beliefs is one of the most first steps, most important constructs of any part of our life, whether it's health, relationships, happiness. Happiness is fleeting, but you know, our whole entire lifestyle starts from how we see ourselves and how we speak to ourselves. It's like the number one rule.
So true.
And for me, in writing my book, Healthy Shouldn't Be This Hard, I was kind of angry in a point, because I was like, why have I been learning all of this work around nutrition and health and lifestyle for so long, and no one is talking about this?
Yeah.
No one is putting this like front and center in how we relay information and how we see ourselves. Because once we do, gosh, it takes a bit of friction away.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that we both start our books with food, but from two totally different belief systems. And we both came to the same outcome. And I find like that so fascinating, that actually you can think you're doing everything right, but it's the mindset is like the most integral part of the start of that journey.
And we kind of take it for granted. We just think that the way things are, that like, and especially if it's someone with authority. You know, I remember my oldest brother, I have one brother who's 10 years older, and he came out as gay back in the 80s.
My brother's gay.
Oh, really? Are we like parallel? What number are you?
3.
I'm a third. You're the third of 3? Me too. This is freakish. Wow.
Dyslexic ADHD.
That's crazy. And your oldest sibling is the gay one?
Yeah.
This is weird. How old are you? If you don't mind.
36.
Okay, so I've got a few years on you. But anyway, so when
This is weird.
It is kind of weird. That is kind of weird. Yeah.
We've both written very similar books.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. So like anyway, so when my brother came out in the 80s, the first thing my parents did was take him to a psychologist, because back then being gay was in the DSM. It was a disorder.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now that's changed. And so we're constantly revising these things. And I think, there's a big part of the book around pain, about how the medical establishment has now completely 180'd on pain. It used to be in the States, I don't know, in the UK, but there was a while where you went to the doctor and they would take your blood pressure, your heart rate, your temperature, and one of your vital signs was pain. They would constantly ask you, how much pain are you in? Pain, pain, pain. And what this did...
Well, look at the Sackler family.
Exactly. And this actually fueled the opioid epidemic, because we constantly told people, you shouldn't be in pain, you shouldn't be in pain, you shouldn't be in pain. No, that's not true. That in fact, the brain, for 200,000 years, the human species, 2 million years, when we were back in primates, but 200,000 years of Homo sapiens, the brain has an amazing ability to tune out pain.
Like radio.
Yeah, exactly. That the more we focus on it, based on our beliefs, it's called the fear, pain, fear loop.
Yeah.
That chronic pain is caused by, and it's not, so that's neuroplastic pain, which is different from physiological pain. So neurological, this chronic pain is defined as pain that's been around for more than 6 months, that has no known cause. And millions of people suffer through it. And it's caused, we think now, because of this fear, pain, fear loop, that because I'm afraid of how this pain might affect me, it amplifies that pain response, which causes me more fear, which causes me more pain. And
that could be psychosomatic, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Not that it's not real. People hear that and they think they're faking it. No.
No, but it amplifies it.
All pain is real.
Yeah.
All pain is real. And all pain is in the mind. Because where else could it be? Right? It's not out here. It's not in your elbow. It's not in your back. Pain is here. Pain doesn't happen in your back.
Sending your pain signals.
That's right.
It's firing.
That's right. So pain is not suffering. Sickness is not illness. That sickness is when I have broken bone, cancer. That's something is broken, biologically broken. Illness is in the mind. Illness is the interpretation of those symptoms. And it turns out that 80% of healthcare spending is spent on illness, not sickness. And so it turns out you can actually cure it. It's called pain reprocessing therapy. That you can actually cure chronic pain and all these exclusionary diagnoses like fibromyalgia, there's many others, that it's really about our beliefs. It's this fear system we have about, oh, there comes my symptoms again. And I used to have this with my back pain, that I would, it's happening again. I'm gonna have an episode. I'd have to lie on the ground, ice it, cool it, don't move it, immobilize, all this stuff. Turns out that only made it worse because I'm hyper-fixating on the pain.
Yeah, well, you're becoming hyper-vigilant, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
And now I don't do that anymore. Now I still get back pain from time to time. But now whenever I get that twinge of pain, instead I have to remind myself, and I literally say this in my head, I say, I'm not in danger. I'm not in danger. And I do the same, I'm safe. I do the same thing that caused that pain. I do it 10 times.
Yeah.
So sometimes, if I'm getting down in a chair and it'll hurt, okay, I'm going to do it 10 times to teach my brain I'm safe. There's no danger here. And my back pain went away. It wasn't because of past trauma. It wasn't body keeps a score. It wasn't any of that. It was just that I was freaking out. I was associating this signal, this information with suffering.
You're kind of disassociating, basically.
So it's disassociating? What do you mean?
So kind of like pulling yourself out of your body, basically, and going into the hypervigilant state, whereas a lot of us need to become more regulated, right? And regulating our nervous system and kind of like allowing us to feel safe in our bodies is really important. Not kind of like we kind of look up from our brain that's disconnected from this. So it's like all happens here.
So true.
But it's actually putting it together.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, they when you look at skeletons of people who died before modern medicine, you know how many diseases people used to have? They had like parasites and syphilis and all kinds of stuff happening in their bodies that we don't have today.
Yeah.
They were probably in constant. How do they function? We get a migraine and we're out for the rest of the day, right? Somehow people...
We don't die from infectious diseases anymore because of antibiotics.
Right. But and it didn't matter your wealth or status, right? The kings of England had all kinds of crazy things happening in their bodies that they just had to deal with. And so there's something to this that we've in a way lost. In the book, I talk about this guy, Daniel Gisler, who he was a commodities trader. He's a commodities trader and a very numbers guy, very analytical, like the opposite of woo-woo, very cut and dry guy. And in his 50s, he trips and he has this ankle injury that needs pins put into his bones. And it takes 2 years to heal. And in that time when his bones are healing, he comes across this YouTube video and he learns about hypnosedation. And hypnosedation teaches him how to do what we've talked about, how to separate pain from suffering. And we've been talking about psychological pain and suffering. In his case, it was physiological. So Daniel, by the time that his surgery is on the calendar to have those pins removed from his bones, he is able to undergo a 55-minute procedure where scalpel is cutting into his flesh, where metal is yanked from bone, and he does this entire procedure without any anesthesia. He's completely awake. No local anesthesia, no topical anesthesia, all through the power of his mind. And I'm telling you, if I didn't see the video, I wouldn't believe it. But I've seen the actual video. And what's crazy is that this is actually not uncommon. That tens of thousands of people in Switzerland, in France, in Spain, in Belgium have done hypnosedation, have done surgery without anesthesia. It's actually not that uncommon. What have they done? They are able to focus that pinhole of attention, that 50 bits of information of conscious awareness. They learn to focus it away from the suffering, even though they feel the signal. Daniel tells me, yeah, I knew that they were doing something. But by putting himself in this hypnotic trance, by self-hypnotizing, it never became suffering. He was able to quite literally separate the pain from the suffering.
Well, I think about hypnobirthing there.
Also true. Yeah, also.
That's what makes me think about a lot of people that have gone into hypnobirthing where, I think my sister did that and her husband kept being like, how are you feeling? And she was just like, shh.
Yeah.
She literally was just in her mind.
Right.
Trying to basically hypnotize herself.
And I'm not advocating for it. I'm not going to do it anytime soon. I'm certainly not going to do the hypno-pregnancy or hypnobirth. But the reason I tell this story, and again, it's one of those things that I thought was, woo-woo nonsense. No, it's real. It is real. And the reason I tell that story is because if human beings can do that, there's nothing genetically different about Daniel or the tens of thousands of people who have done hypnosedation. There's nothing special about them. They're not different. It's that they've learned a skill. And if humans can learn that skill, if any humans can learn that skill, it turns out we all can. Wow. So that when we're on a diet and we're feeling food noise or hunger pangs, when we're having an argument and we feel hurt, turns out we have that skill too. I mean, if Daniel can undergo surgery for an hour without anesthesia, what can the rest of us do?
So now that takes me to my last question, which is what I ask everyone. And the reason why I ask this question is because I think it very much relates in my mind to how each one of us maybe see our own understanding of what success means. Because I think success is defined incorrectly in society today, which is, what does live well, be well mean to you?
I think live well, be well to me means living in a way that minimizes regret. I think what I don't want is to live life and look back. We've all heard these regrets of the dying. But what are we doing to make sure that we don't have those regrets of the dying? I want to look back at my life, not just on my deathbed, but each day, each week, each year, and say, I lived it the way I want to live it.
Yeah.
That's the goal, to not be beholden to my reactions. What happens, I can't control. I can't control the economy. I can't control AI. I can't control what people say about me or to me. I can't control that stuff. But what's in my control is how I react. No one can take that away from me. And that's what I want to live with.
Yeah, I love that. A life without regret. It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for
pleasure.
coming on.
What's your answer to that question? I'm so curious. Having written the book and all that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think, the reason why I started this is because I was so curious about how we can become, for ourselves, our best selves, without any external expectations, like what it really means. Because I think externally we are so gravitated towards other people's expectations or capitalism or kind of what we're meant to do to succeed in society. And when I looked in the Oxford Dictionary, it defines success as status, money, and fame. And I was like, wow, that is not success in my brain. So live well, be well, to me, I think for me, it's about having a lot more kind of compassion inwards and compassion outwards. I mean, compassion for me has been like a massive antidote because it allows one to step into the suffering, being from an English culture. It's a big cringe word. We really struggle with compassion over here.
Really?
Whereas when I speak in America, people are like, yeah, woo, we love compassion. And I speak here and you just see the audience's face. And myself, I really struggled to connect
what
to
do
that
they associate
word.
it? Why is
weak? Self-pity.
Self-compassion is considered weak?
Very weak.
How do they define self-compassion then, that it makes you sound weak?
that the fact that if you just like love yourself, you know, you're going to like fall backward
Oh,
and you're
interesting.
very victim, self-pity, maybe potentially narcissistic.
Huh.
Whereas I treat it as the friend filter.
Yeah.
So like, would you treat yourself as someone else you would treat that you
There you
love,
go.
right?
Right.
And I talk about this as a child, like, would you feed your child the same food that you're feeding yourself?
Mhm.
Like when you know inside the balance. I don't think health is as complicated as we make it, which is why the title was Healthy Shouldn't Be This Hard. I think we've completely made it either elitist, too expensive, and actually just like it feels so out of reach. And actually, when you really strip back, it's really, really not that hard, but we've become overwhelmed with where we are right now. And we all think that we lack the willpower or lack the motivation, and we don't. Actually, we all have that within ourselves because we can do it for our children quite well.
Right. Or for a friend.
And we can do it for a friend. Like, how often would you cook yourself the same food that you would make for someone that you love that's coming over? Very rarely.
Right.
And so for me, actually like treating yourself with compassion as you treat outwardly to others, I believe is like the kind of connection to living well, being well.
It's a huge trick of just asking yourself, if I had a friend who's going through the exact same situation, what would I say to them?
Exactly.
And it's almost never what you say to yourself.
It's never. And it's the same thing with these belief systems, right? You know, saying, oh, my mum's so judgmental. Your friend might reflect back, and you can say it with a partner in an argument. You can go to your friends and be like, oh, he annoyed me so much. He did this thing and it really pissed me off. And a friend will be like, but did he? Or, you know, they might reflect it back to you in a different way, but did he really do it that way? Or like, are you maybe seeing a different perspective? You know, and that's really helpful because you're kind of doing the same thing. Is it true?
Right.
Right? It's coming from a place of love, right? And a place of like expansion of your perception. But we very rarely do it towards ourselves.
Yeah, because we think it makes us tougher. We think it makes us more motivated, but it's perfectly testable of whether it's a limiting belief. When you tell yourself, be tougher and don't give yourself self-compassion, and when you say things like that are not self-compassionate, how do you feel? Do you feel more motivated? If it works for you, great. If it works, don't mess with it.
I think it works to a point. This is the thing that I saw with research in the book. You know, discipline is important, right, to an extent, but it's like having a boss where you do a presentation and the boss is like, that's not great. And you're like, okay, I need to go back and like sort this out. But then when you hand that work back in again and the boss 4 or 5 times has told you just it's really, really not very good and given you no constructive criticism, nothing that's helpful,
right?
You are so demotivated to go and do that the 6th time because you're like, do you know what? I can't work any harder.
Right.
And I'm getting no recognition. And I think that's the most important part. Like, I think you can 100% look at your faults, but you kind of got to have some type of compassion to be able to be like, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
And move forward. Whereas if it's all hard plus hard, to a point, I think you actually see it drop off the motivation.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, I think that there should be a criteria for quitting. Because hearing some of this stuff, people think, "Well, is quitting? Should I never quit? Is it always perseverance no matter what?" And I think there is a place for quitting, but we tend to quit way too soon, right? So I'll share real quick. So there's these 3 criteria. Number 1 is I think you need to have a mile marker that you're going to say, "I'm going to try this new belief, this new behavior, and I'm going to do it for X number of days." And so let's say you've done all this work, you did inquiry-based stress reduction like we talked about, and you have a new belief and you're going to try it on for size. Okay, I'm going to try with my mom. When she says something I don't like, I'm going to try that perspective. I'm going to remind myself, I'm going to have a Post-it note, and every time I'm going to say to myself, as opposed to she's too judgmental, I'm going to say, we're all working with the tools we have. I'm going to try it. So you set a number of days, okay? The second criteria is, are you learning? So I think with a lot of things, when you fail, people interpret that failure as, well, that means I should quit. I've been dating and there's no good guys out there. There's no good women out there. Like I'm failing, or I'm trying to start my business. It's not working. Nobody's buying. Well, if I had a time machine and I could zoom into the future and I could see, hey, you know what? If you try this thing 5 more times, if you fail 5 times, the 6th time you're going to succeed. If I knew that for a fact, 100% confidence, what would your relationship with failure feel like? Well, now you'd be like, okay, let's fail. Come on, let's go fail quickly. Because 5 more dates, I'm going to meet the love of my life. And 5 more sales calls, I'm going to close that deal. You'd want to get through that failure. So just because you're failing doesn't mean you're not learning. So just failing is not a criteria to quit. The third criteria, and this is the most important, I think, when it comes to health and fitness, is does persistence make a difference? I think a lot of folks don't realize that for some things, persistence does not make a difference. So if you're working at a company that has really bad company culture, banging your head against the wall and staying at that company, even though people are miserable there, everybody's a bummer, it's, toxic, I don't want to be here. You're not going to outlive that company culture. Persistence does not make a difference. But when it comes to fitness, for example, when it comes to writing a book, when it comes to raising a family, you are going to hit that plateau for a long time in fitness. I know with my fitness journey, a long time, nothing happened. The scale wasn't moving. I wasn't making any progress, no PRs, nothing, just flat. But then if you persist, eventually something will happen.
Yeah.
So in some cases, persistence really does make a difference. But until you hit those 3 criteria of did I meet my mile marker? Am I still learning? And does persistence make a difference? Until then, don't quit. So that's, I think, a useful reminder for me.
That's a perfect way to end it.
All right.
And then you don't live with any regrets.
Hopefully.
There we go.
You're still going to live with regrets. Minimize regrets.
Minimize regrets. Minimize
And even then, I
regrets.
think your philosophy of self-compassion, when I mess up every day, I say something like, oh, I should have maybe said that differently, or how can I say that differently next time? What do I
100%.
learn from it? So I still have regrets,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to minimize the things that I can versus stuff that just happens. So everything's a learning opportunity, but you're still gonna, of course, mess up.
Yeah, because that's life, right?
That's life. That's right.
I think once you
but is
accept
it?
that-
I used to say like, oh, I'm such an idiot, right? Like it just
It's
would
just not helpful.
roll off the tongue. But I would say to myself all the time, oh God, I can't believe I did that. I'm such an idiot. That's not helpful.
No, it's not helpful.
It's not helpful.
No, I'm still learning.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still
Yeah.
learning. Yeah, there's always an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure. This was so
It
fun.
was so fun.
Thank you.
And I will link your book in the show notes below. Congratulations on being a New York Times bestseller.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was great being here with you. I appreciate it.